OTB. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. We're here with you every morning from 7:30 until 9:30. We stream live across all of our social channels. So we're on facebook.com/offtheball, youtube.com/offtheball, and we're also on twitter.com/offtheball. We stream on Periscope. We also stream every morning on the Go Loud app. It's our shiny brand new app. It's the best way to listen to OTB Sports Radio, which is full, uninterrupted sports content in your earballs every morning. Also in your earballs this morning is Eoin Sheahan. Eoin, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very good. I had a question for you straight off the bat here, right? How did the communiques arrive for members of the Kerry media mafia? It seemed like almost imperceptibly yesterday you'd picked up on the main story and were leading the way. If I'm not mistaken, you were the very first person to start having a go at David Goff, and it's clearly an orchestrated campaign on behalf of the Kerry media mafia. So who's the ringleader? How does that happen? Is it a text? Is it just or are you just watch signals? Is it like a sleeper cell kind of? A code word is given, and everybody wakes up and goes, right, get him, get Goff, get David Goff. Is that what happens?
It's somebody who gets a ghost train up from Killarney every morning, sits in the corner of the newsroom and scratches his eyebrow twice. Then I know I have to have a go at the potential referee. That's how it happens.
Is it?
I didn't start this yesterday.
You did. You were first. I see everybody's on the bandwagon today, but you were the first one.
No.
First one. Now,
the reason why they started in the office.
The Boar's Head on Saturday night does not count. Or Sunday night does not count.
I wasn't there Sunday night. The reason why I was Saturday was the only night I was there. Great night, not Sunday night. Because I'm a total professional. The reason why this came up was because Tommy Rooney in the office brought it up as a mead man. And obviously I hadn't actually seen this whatsoever, and Tommy had mentioned that David Goff should be refereeing the All-Ireland final and that there may be some objection to it. And then we see then yesterday Eamon Fitzmaurice coming out and saying he shouldn't referee the final, but I'm not sure who else is saying it.
It was Brian Gavin's column, I think, who started the whole thing. So that was the... So,
fair enough.
And look, hang on a second now. It's not necessarily cause and effect. It looks to me like all of Kerry's media people have decided that they don't want...
Who?
Oh,
Name names here.
What?
Who that don't want Brian Gavin, or that don't want... certainly don't want Brian Gavin refereeing the...
I mean, it'd be interesting.
That David Goff...
he'd let things go. It'd be an open game. Well, Mike Quirk is the same. And so obviously the two lads are talking in a podcast.
Yeah.
And they're, funnily enough, agreeing with each other. Like, even Mike Quirk, I'm astounded that Mike has been sucked into the vortex of yourself and Eamon Fitzmaurice. And I can't wait to see what Dara's column says. Has Dara written a column today? Tomorrow. I can't wait to see what Dara has to say about David Goff. When will the announcement happen? Not for a while, is it?
Oh God, I would say soonish actually. I think you'd get a fortnight or even sometimes a bit longer to actually know the All-Ireland referee.
Okay.
And Goff hasn't obviously got an All-Ireland final yet.
No.
Famously. And you would say that he's probably due one. The question here is he due a Kerry Dublin game is the thing after a lot of bad blood between Kerry supporters and David Goff from 2016. That for me is not an issue. I think if there's bad blood between supporters and referee, it doesn't matter. There's going to be a bit of vitriol from the stands. There's going to be vitriol towards the referee no matter who the referee is. So I don't think that's a factor. The question is, and it's been brought up by Fitzmaurice here, is that he's a man who lives and works in Dublin, and that that should be taken into account when he's refereeing a Dublin game.
because he might bump into somebody on the street.
Yeah.
And so what?
Like, I mean, is that
what's wrong with that?
Being immersed in... Like, I've softened up towards Dublin people a lot since I've been living up here.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
You might even, consider, spending time in the company of some of them. Like, I don't understand, Owen, really, what impact is it going to have? That
we should get Eamon Fitzmaurice on and actually ask him then. I'm literally saying what he said in...
Grand, but do you agree with this?
Kind of. Would I prefer to see David Goff not referee Kerry Dublin in an All-Ireland final? Yes.
Not on the basis of the fact that he lives in Dublin.
Are there worse referees than David Goff?
You were anti-David Goff yesterday, irrespective of the fact that he lived in Dublin.
Yeah, I'm anti-David Goff for a Kerry Dublin game, yeah. I would prefer David Goff not refereeing a Kerry Dublin game.
A Kerry any game? It's Kerry that you have the problem with him refereeing, not Dublin.
Not particularly. I think the Dublin thing actually gives I would be complaining about David Goff regardless because I'm a Kerry supporter and I was very angry in 2016. And that does not mean I'm right. That does not mean I'm right.
Exactly, because that's a good point. So you're wrong. Okay, apology accepted. Which is the whole point, because he did apologise. Right?
Yeah, fair play to him.
And you didn't realise he'd apologised until like last night?
I was kind of reminded of it, yeah, and I think fair play to him. Fair play to him for saying that. I don't think the apology went down well, to be honest with you. I actually don't care that much about this. Like, that's probably why I'm not fighting this that much. If a referee is going to decide Kerry versus Dublin in the battle for 5 in a row, then we've got a serious issue on our hands, and the game needs to be looked at in itself. But if you're putting a gun to my head and said, give me names of the referees that you don't want refereeing Kerry versus Dublin, as a Kerry supporter, I accept my bias here. Like, I'm completely going into this conversation with bias here. I would say no. Please don't give us David Goff. PTSD is a real thing.
Right. That's it's a funny thing for everybody to be obsessed about.
Eamon Fitzmaurice's argument is that on a separate thing, like the thrust of his argument is him living and working in Dublin. The thrust of his argument is not 2016. Granted, he did mention 2016 as an aside, but the thrust of his argument is living and working in Dublin.
Him and Mikey Sheahan both say, yeah, he apologised for the... So I don't really remember that vividly. Crowley gets... it's a shoulder, but is it a barge from Kevin McManaman?
He's nailed in the chest by Kevin McManaman. It's like, and it was a Kerry were a point down. It would have been a scoreable free, and it would have been level game. Like, would Dublin have pulled away in extra time? Was it even extra time, or would have gone straight to replay? I don't know.
I think.
Who knows? Like, sliding doors, all that sort of thing.
Sure.
I think, to be honest with you, I'd love. I'm not sure would we be having this argument if there was, say, another game between these two teams from a different ref in the interim period. It's just been so long, and I'm sure Fitzmaurice is kind of feeling that frustration that they never got a crack off them in the championship since that moment. Since you could argue that David Goff took the opportunity away to actually get extra time or a replay. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that Kerry would have won it in that time, and I accept that I may be completely blinded in this, but all I can do is speak how I actually feel on this.
Grand, okay, so it's 2016 that colours everything for you, right?
For sure, when it comes to Dublin, like, it was the last time Kerry played Dublin, like, you were looking at the teams before you came on, that's a vastly different team. It's a long, long time ago.
Yeah, they're both very different teams, although the Dublin backline is very similar to what it is still. There's a bit of change. But just to tease us out a little bit more, okay, because Fitzmaurice and Mikey Sheahan both say, yeah, we've seen that, we've seen the apology, but actually we both watched the game back, and there were loads of inconsistencies in that game. That it wasn't just that incident that they're upset with, that's the end of a game at which they're very upset with. It's not, I think the stuff about living in Dublin is a complete red herring, and it's very unfair, because it means that he'll never be able to referee in All-Ireland involving Dublin, even though he's not actually from Dublin. He's not a Dub. Which is, I mean, if we're going to stop people from living in counties and then refereeing those counties, that we've, like, especially when it's Dublin, which is the capital city, which has a population of 1.2, 1.4, however big it was in the last census. You can't do that. It's a ridiculous argument, really.
I think that when you add to that 2016, I don't think it's that a ridiculous argument.
It's a ridiculous argument on its own.
I think on its own, perhaps.
So 2016 is the real issue. And this is a red herring for the 2016 issue.
It's completely red herring. I think if you combine the two of them together, I think suddenly you build up an argument where you're like, I would be leaning against this guy. But to be honest with you, if we get an email through today and it's like David Goff is All-Ireland final for All-Ireland final referee, I don't expect there to be a big hoo-ha about it. Like, I will happily admit
there's already a hoo-ha about it.
I won't be that satisfied about it. So Eamon Fitzmaurice won't be that satisfied about it. Peter Keane probably won't be that satisfied about it. But, like, I mean, ultimately, when you actually see these moments happen in the history, you can't but be a little bit hurt by them. And that is what's coming true. Like, you may say, maybe you're in a better position than me to tell me that I'm wrong. And if you think I'm wrong, then fair enough.
I just think, well, I mean, you said you were wrong.
I said that I was biased.
Okay. You said sorry.
No, I didn't say sorry.
Earlier, anyway.
No, I didn't say sorry. When did I say sorry?
When I accepted your apology.
Well, exactly. That'll be typical you, putting forward the forgiveness before the apology is even given. This is actually one of the most bizarre things you've ever brought up on
no,
the show. Like,
are you joking? This is so.
Like, saying that I apologised for saying that I'm biased or whatever this crap is.
Well, we'll look back at the tape. But this is the orchestrated. This is the start of the orchestrated campaign from Kerry to try and get in the heads of the Dubs in advance of the game, and it's a little bit. It was reminiscent to me when I woke up this morning.
How do you know it's orchestrated?
Well, you said you got the little guy in the corner. I mean. It's not a coincidence that everybody has the same talking points.
Who's everyone? Give me you said yourself that this has been brought up on a podcast where Mike Quirk and Eamon Fitzmaurice have spoken to each other.
Mikey Sheahan had the same talking points. You had the same talking points.
Mikey Sheahan spoke separately to that. You were the one bringing this up. We didn't speak about this yesterday in the show. No, this is not some sort of weird orchestrated campaign.
We spoke about David Goff yesterday in the show.
No, we didn't.
I was just in the office.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure we did in the show.
We did not speak about this in the show.
Okay,
You've gone into full paranoia mode here.
No, my point is that everybody accused the Dubs of trying to take down Lee Keegan a couple of years back with the orchestrated campaign to get him. And it's just a thing that happens. People end up talking to each other.
You're talking about red herrings and you're bringing up Lee Keegan in relation to orchestrated campaigns, but when this is clearly, I just find this really weird. Fair enough if you're like, this specific argument I disagree with. If you say that, fair enough. But if you're saying this is an orchestrated campaign, I think that's just blatantly wrong.
I think I'll be amazed if if nobody else mentions this, none of the rest of the Kerry pundits mention this, and this doesn't become a big story.
But I think you're pretty content to actually stir this up this morning.
It's already become a big story.
But not really, to be honest with
you. Yes, it's in the Examiner. It was in the Examiner last night. Tommy was already talking about it on Twitter last night. People are getting at it. The Kerry fans are out there getting at the referee to get in his head to try and give themselves a bit of an edge ahead of the game.
It's not that a massive story. It's been mentioned on a podcast and it's been picked up by the newspaper that records that podcast.
It was all over Twitter last night. It's going to be all over Twitter today. Let's wait and see what happens. You're saying it's not going to be a story this week?
That's not what I said. I said it's not that a massive story so far. To be honest with you, I actually don't get... The thing that's actually irked me this morning is that you're saying this is some sort of weird orchestrated campaign and that I've apologised. That you said, you said sorry this morning. I didn't want to say sorry.
Relax.
I accepted it. I accepted that there's a little bit of a bias this morning. That's it. This is a really, really strange thing that you've got into your head this morning. And clearly, this orchestrated campaign has worked on you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just interested to see how the story develops and evolves this week.
It's such a weird thing to it's such a weird thing to guess. It's such a weird dog with a bone this morning that you have.
We're 3 weeks out from an All-Ireland final. Kerry have decided to make a big deal out of the referee in advance of it.
Okay. Let's go. Let's settle for that. Kerry's decided to make a big deal out of a referee that hasn't even been decided yet.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're trying to get the GAA not to. So who are the other referees? Would you prefer Joe McQuillan, who refereed the Dubs in 3 All-Ireland finals?
Not really. No, I haven't really thought about this, to be honest, in terms of what my power rankings is of the best referees in the country. I thought Deegan did an all right job at the weekend. Then again, Kerry won, and sure to be sour grapes, wouldn't it, if people were complaining about a referee. So I don't know, maybe, as I say, maybe I accept, I'm potentially open to the idea that I don't like David Goff because Kerry lost the 2016 All-Ireland semi-final.
And that seems to be a fairly widespread view amongst the Kerry fans. All right, are we doing what's coming up, or are we doing our combined teams first? Combined teams. Okay, let's do our combined teams. Who's going first? Here's mine. So I've got Cluxton, Cooper, Morley, Tom Sullivan, McCarthy, McCaffrey, Murphy, Fenton and Moran. I was tempted to put Connolly in at centre forward, but I changed my mind. Kilkenny, Howard and O'Shea, Con, Mannion and Clifford. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was a bit. I mean, there are definitely some positions that I leaned Kerry because I was too blue. What have you got?
I've gone 8-7. I've gone Cluxton as well. Cooper, O'Sullivan, Paul Murphy, half-back line, all Dubs.
Howard,
McCaffrey. Kind of fit him in. That should be Brian Fenton, not Brian Menton, in midfield alongside David Moran. There's no Meath men in this midfield, but that is Brian Fenton. Stephen O'Brien, Sean O'Shea, Paul Mannion, David Clifford, Con O'Callaghan and Paul Ganey as the full forward line. So it's 8-7 there.
So the only change is O'Brien and Ganey in for you. Who are you missing from the forward line? No Kilkenny? Is that it?
Yeah, the Kilkenny, yeah. Kilkenny's the only one from your forward line that I'm missing this morning.
I had 4 of Dubs. I had Howard in as well.
You've gone Howard in the forwards line. And you are missing Paul Ganey.
Yeah.
That's who you've changed. So
you've got Mannion and O'Callaghan, and I've got Howard and Kilkenny.
Yeah, but I put Howard into the backs, obviously, to make that extra room for a forward.
And what back did you drop?
Tyke Morley.
Right.
Yeah, Tommy's saying I'm going to get a hammering McNoke here on Kilkenny in my team.
Yeah.
Potentially I will. I've gone for the best 15 footballers that I see rather than the most effective. Perhaps the most interesting question is who are you bringing off the bench there? If you have Tommy Walsh or Diarmuid Connolly to bring off the bench, who are you bringing on?
I mean, come on. What? That's not a contest.
Okay, fair enough. But Diarmuid Connolly, I would say Diarmuid Connolly probably edges it for me, to be honest. But actually edges it rather than an actual comprehensive win off the bench. That was kind of one of the other things I was thinking about.
Michael Fitzsimons is on John Fogarty's All-Stars team that he's picked this year. He's got him in ahead of Johnny Cooper.
Can see that, yeah. Cooper versus Fitzsimons. They're going to probably battle it out for one All-Star position, are they? Unless one of them has an absolutely storming All-Ireland final. So, I don't know. You can definitely make an argument for Fitzsimons. I was just kind of weighing them both up this morning. But yeah, it seems Fitzsimons or Cooper is the way to go.
Coming up on RWC AM here, we've got a very busy shuffle all the way until 9:30 this morning. Cian Tracey is going to join us just after 8 o'clock to talk about the Rugby World Cup. Lots of storylines after the weekend. The annihilation of New Zealand, 14-man New Zealand, and the All Black media are absolutely up in arms about the fact that Barrett got sent off at the weekend. We've got power rankings, an update coming your way at 7:55, which is 10 minutes away from now. We'll bring you the sports pages in just a moment. And then after 8 this morning, in the next hour, we're talking about our Jubilee team and the minor players of the week with Electric Ireland. Gareth A. Davies is going to talk to us about the big storylines in boxing. Joshua Ruiz is going to happen in Saudi Arabia, apparently, to help spread the sport of boxing. Said with a straight face. Graham Hunter coming your way after 9, and then at 9:15 we have sports news with Phil for you. So we're going to start with the sports pages next, though.
The Off the Ball Open tees off in Abu Dhabi this November 17th to 23rd. Join us with return flights from Dublin, 5 nights in a 4-star hotel, golf on 2 championship courses, gala awards dinner, Peter Lorry golf clinic, and a live Off the Ball roadshow, all for just €1,750. Kevin Kilban and Kieran Donaghy will be there too. The Off the Ball Open, Abu Dhabi this November. Book by August 18th to avail of this early bird offer at CassidyTravel.ie. Deposit of €250 required. Terms and conditions apply.
Here we go. It is the Irish Times this morning. McGrath cherishes the good and bad days with Tip. So this is the Noel McGrath interviews coming out from the press night the other night. Murphy, jack of all trades and master of one. This feature of Eoin Murphy, who it seems is definitely the consensus #1 goalkeeper in the country at the moment. And then the other one, big story from them today, is the column that comes from Kevin McStay. No hiding from Mayo's many mistakes. I wonder will Kevin McStay ever get the opportunity to manage Mayo at this stage? Do you think that's done?
Yeah, I think so, isn't it? McStay's probably enjoying the kind of time away from management as well. I guess when you could come from a place where you're doing really, really well with Roscommon, and then you're kind of put into perspective that the next step for Roscommon is like winning in All-Ireland, it's kind of a demoralising situation. Given what we saw at the weekend, it's such an impossible next step. And, you know, maybe winning Connacht titles and all that is something that they should be aiming for, and that should be like the zenith of their year every single year, and that should keep people like Kevin McStay involved in football. But for him as a manager, the next step is contending for an All-Ireland, isn't it? Hard to know how that happens.
Yeah, and also the end of Roscommon seemed to be fairly significant in that a bunch of their best players didn't play for them. Like, there seemed to be a kind of disconnect between his style and the modern footballer. So you can't be surely injecting that back into a dressing room, can you?
Yeah, like it's different, isn't it? Like Cunningham obviously managed to come through with a fairly different squad to what McStay left behind this year in terms of people coming back into the fold, and obviously had a brilliant year. So I don't know, like McStay obviously thinks about football in a very forward way. Like, is there perhaps a Rochford-esque role for him with some county even? Like, is he somebody that would kind of prefer the backroom role, the coach, the selector, whatever it may be? Is there something in...
Doesn't seem like a backroom kind of guy, though, does he?
No, he doesn't.
Stephen O'Brien, he says, definitely going to be playing, one technical issue hovers over this final. There's no question, but Stephen O'Brien's black card against Meath will be rescinded and he'll be available to play. Most people never read the body collision rule fully. To deliberately collide with an opponent after he's played the ball away, and the other one is taking out the opponent for the purpose of taking him out of the movement to play. And he says that there's no movement in this instance, so O'Brien will be cleared on that technicality. But what needs to happen is that the GA should clarify this by tomorrow of this week, and that both counties settle into the build-up of what truly is an All-Ireland final for the ages, which is a fair point, rather than wait until the last minute.
Back page of the Irish Daily Star is Alison Paynes, #1, ruled out for over a month. It's a big blow for Liverpool fans over the last 24 hours, hearing that it's going to be a bit of a lengthy absence for the goalkeeper. Pogba in hint at Red's exit. Meanwhile, that's Jeremy Cross's story. Gavin backs O'Brien appeal. Kind of backs it. He says that he doesn't like to see anybody get banned for an All-Ireland final. And Muggsy hits out at Sean. Owen Mulligan has blasted Sean Kavanagh as the war of words continues over Mickey Hart's future as Tyrone boss.
Yeah, this was very strong stuff from Owen Mulligan in his Paddy Power column. He was saying that Sean Kavanagh must have forgotten his notes when he was doing the Sunday game, because Kavanagh was asked about Mickey Hart's contribution, and he said something in the past tense. I can't even remember what it was. It was like, he's been a great servant to Tyrone. And that was all he said. Muggsy was like, well, he will continue to be a great servant for the next 12 months, and at that point he'll be allowed to make his own exit on his own terms.
Yeah, what's the difference in 12 months? I don't know. I'm going through the GA pages here. No mention of massive story David Goff anywhere.
Because it's only happened.
Apology accepted.
It's only happened. You said, okay, so it's not going to be mentioned for the rest of the week then?
Well, it's not mentioned in the newspaper today, this massive story.
Bringing the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning, that's David Goff's head in the masthead. Eoin Fitzmaurice, why David Goff shouldn't referee a Dublin-Kerry final. Is this not the newspapers this morning? Oh, it is. Look, it's just started. And then there's also a picture of Brian Cody, the art of management. Why honesty in application means so much to Brian Cody, and it's obviously a picture of Cody at this week's press night in Langton's, and to just bring you some of the stuff from inside. There's the piece there, written by Tony Lean. He did our first Super 8 game against Dublin. You can always have a whinge. Dublin got a goal. It was 30 seconds over the allotted first half injury time, but we didn't defend it properly. This is Ronan McCarthy, the Cork manager, saying that David Goff should be the manager in the All-Ireland final. He's a top referee. You pick your top refs for a game in this stature, and I feel he should be in the mix for it. But Mike Quirk said if there was a Cork referee living and working in Kerry, he wouldn't get an All-Ireland final involving Kerry, and I think that probably knocks it on the head for David. So we'll see.
It is the only newspaper, I think, carrying it this morning from their own podcast. It's not in the Irish Independent this morning. That leads with helpless Cody pays down influence on Katz's glory bid. Apology accepted, it's okay. Jack McCaffrey with a young child at Dublin, in fairness, trigger finger as soon as they reach the All-Ireland final, media day on a Monday. It's pretty quick going, isn't it? To get things turned around. They got all their business done last night. Kerry's time is right now, it's not next year, insists Gavin. That's from the same media event. And Carbery set to be fit for opener is the headline of Murray O'Connor's piece. This is probably the big story on the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. So he looks set to miss Ireland's remaining warm-up games, but he is expected to be fit in time for the opening World Cup game against Scotland on September the 22nd. So this is good news, right? This could have been a lot worse.
Which bit, sorry?
Joey Carbery being
the fact that he's back. I mean, that's kind of the main story of the day, to be honest, is that Joey Carbery will be fit for the first. Now, how fit's he going to be? How long will it take him to get back up to match fitness?
Well, what you've got to bank on now is Johnny Sexton being fully fit for the first two games of the Rugby World Cup. Yeah, because obviously you've got a bit of downtime, hopefully, after those first two games, and that you're kind of working your way back in. Your third choice out half can start at the Samoa and Russia games potentially. Even then, it's kind of like
probably need to give game time to Carbery at that point, don't you? Yeah, because if he's not going to get fit, then well, look, we get the full details of this from Cian Tracey just after 8:05. Gregor Paul is going to join us on Skype from Down Under as well at that stage to talk about their defeat at the weekend. Next for me, it's the Irish Daily Mail. O'Brien hope both Kerry and Gavin want to see Ace in final. Jim Gavin fully expects that his Dublin side will face Kerry's Stephen O'Brien in the All-Ireland football final. The boss even hopes hhis rivals forward doesn't miss out on September 1st. Jack has his hands full at the same picture, Jack McCaffrey and McCarthy to recall namesake for Swiss tie. So Mick McCarthy is set to recall James McCarthy to the Irish squad for the massive Euro 2020 qualifier against Switzerland on the 5th of September. The Irish manager sat beside Roy Hodgson at Sellers Park yesterday as McCarthy played for the Crystal Palace under-23s against Birmingham, which is a great sign. And McCarthy signed for Palace last week in his $3 million deal, came through the 90 minutes unscathed. So hopefully he'll be back playing Premier League football sooner rather than later.
The back page of the Sun is, they think it's Old Slova, but we don't. Vows Vinnie Perth. Final hope for O'Brien, meanwhile. That's a story on Stephen O'Brien. It's no more hassle for Manchester United then. Real Madrid will end their pursuit of Manchester United's Paul Pogba if they land Neymar. We will have Graham Hunter on the show a little bit later on to talk about this, and it seems that Lionel Messi himself is going to get involved in the Neymar deal to ensure that he comes back to the Camp Nou. And Zaha faced the sack. Not literally, this is Mamadou Sakho, who took matters into his own hands last Friday, and unbeknownst to manager Roy Hodgson, called a team meeting and said that Wilfred Zaha needs to get his act together and put back on the Crystal Palace jersey and be proud to play for his club. And it seems that that's what's going to happen. To be fair, if Mamadou Sakho tells you to do something, probably do it.
Are we? So that was after the transfer window had closed.
Yes.
I mean, a bit late, really, wasn't it? Teo axed for World Cup after bust-up. So this is a great story coming from the England camp. Ben Teo was yesterday left out of the England squad for the Rugby World Cup in Japan a week after the British and Irish Lions centre was omitted from training following an altercation with Mike Brown on a team night out. Ben Teo, how much did he play for the Lions? Did he play in any of the tests? Was he a test? I can't remember. Was he anyway.
No.
I mean, I still remember Ben Teo in his Ireland jersey. So happy that he was back in the time to, be about to. Anyway, Brown, as expected, was also not included in Eddie Jones' 31-man squad, which starts on September the 20th. But Teo had looked highly likely to make the cut until recent days. So this is, not exactly what I had expected from Eddie Jones. He seemed to be rootin' tootin'. They all go out, they have a good time. Boys will be boys type manager up to this point. And now all of a sudden it's like he's a strict disciplinarian.
Oh, Eddie Jones is a strict disciplinarian when it comes to the World Cup. I think if this happens before Six Nations, does he do that? I think this is like everything he's been working towards will come to fruition now over the next 2-3 months. This is what it is all about. It is strange though to still see risks taken, or certainly when it comes to uncapped players or player, when it comes to McConaughey being included in a World Cup squad. So there is a bit of a stretch there from Eddie Jones. Also pretty quick to do it, isn't he? Like there was no pressure in terms of announcing a Rugby World Cup squad, but maybe he feels that they need just a bit of time to gel together or something like that.
Yeah.
So big call, but perhaps if there is kind of rumours of discontent or whatever it may be, then just nipping that in the bud and not having that becoming an issue in Japan is probably important.
Yeah, fair enough. Although, if Mike Brown wasn't going, then he was going to stir things up. Also, brave man Mike Brown taking on Ben Teo in a fight, right?
Like he has no chance. Must have had backup.
I don't think he's a chance, but maybe Mike Brown thinks he's a chance.
To be fair, Mike Brown probably thinks Mike Brown has a chance in everything.
VAR offsides under review. So this is interesting, right? They're not going to stop using VAR, but football's lawmakers have reviewed the VAR system's approach to offsides to see whether the rules should be changed so that video officials intervene only when there is a clear error. This is going to be an interesting kink, and this not a bad idea at all. It's understood that the International Football Board will study the protocols of VARs and offsides, and it will be debated by its members over the next few months. If any decision is taken to change it, it's likely it will change it next March. So VAR offsides will only be beeped into the referee when there's a bit of mistake, which is kind of how it should be, as opposed to stopping on was there.
Back page of the Herald is Jim Gavin saying Kerry's time is now. They're not a coming team, they're already here. And Allison ruled out for a few weeks. That's Damien Spellman writing about Liverpool's injury worry.
Got the Daily Mirror for you. Pogba, I could still leave. Despite bright start, Reds admits his future's uncertain and only time will tell where he ends up, but Ince insists his heart is not at United. Paul Ince, rent a quote at this stage. Let's me have Heaven and Perth to be next heroes of Dundalk, Vinnie Perth's story. And now Ozil beefs up security with dogs. Mesut Ozil has stepped up his 24-hour security by having dog patrols outside his house. The dogs will work with his normal security after several frightening incidents caused the Arsenal star to miss the club's opening match. Bizarre stories surrounding Mesut Ozil at the moment.
Daily Telegraph this morning leads with Eddie Jones. He takes his big gamble. Teo axed after Brown bust up. Rookie scrum half Hines selected and uncapped McConaughey in the squad. You've also got this story here, Fill Your Boots. Sterling offered record £100 million sponsorship. It's an exclusive from Sam Wallace talking about Air Jordan, who of course moved into the football market a year ago with the branding of Paris Saint-Germain and their football kits. They look set to offer Raheem Sterling a £100 million deal with Air Jordan, and this immediately puts him right up into the ranks with Neymar, Messi and Ronaldo in terms of Europe's most marketable stars. And everything that came with last year in terms of him talking about the portrayal of young black footballers in the media, of course it was never his intention to gain more notoriety from this. It's been absolutely fantastic what he's done, but it has created a profile for Raheem Sterling on a very different level, and when Nike got behind him on that, it kind of played into their backing of Colin Kaepernick, and he's just turned, I know is he on the cover of FIFA, or maybe Virgil van Dijk is, but certainly he's in links with EA as well. It's not just lucrative for him, I think it just shows what a marketable star Raheem Sterling is.
Yeah, and also helps when you start off with a hat-trick.
Well, I was about to say, if you're looking at, I'm not sure what you're Googling there, if you're Googling PFA Player of the Year odds,
no,
I would like
20, it looks like Eden Hazard to me.
Is it Hazard? Probably different editions. Hazard probably deserves to be there, but so good news for
there's another one for Van Dijk, all right, yeah.
The Guardian this morning leads with Murray holds course. Former world number one makes his singles return in Cincinnati, and World Cup worry. Jones admits discipline fears after Teo axed over altercation. And then finally for me, the Racing Post. New festival mayors chase for the greater good. One race to be axed in 2021 and 4 miler reduced in distance next season as Cheltenham rings changes. And the back page is enjoy the spectacle. Salford and Leeds to put on a show in cup confrontation. It's the EFL Cup first round tonight. It's the big one. Salford against Leeds.
After the opening weekend, Raheem Sterling 5-1, Kevin De Bruyne 7-1, Salah 9-1, Harry Kane 14, and then after that, we've got the Irish news for you next. Tyrone will get over the line eventually, insists Morgan. Interesting stuff from Morgan post-match, in that he says that there should also be a specific clock put on for free takers. Tommy Walsh got booked. I didn't see what he got booked for, but actually he got booked for pushing Morgan in the chest when Morgan was running up to take a free. I don't know I can't remember if Morgan scored that one or not, but
he did, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of just a waste of time for everybody, right? And like, I don't know, the intimidation didn't work in this instance. It might work in some others, but either there should be a clock and you should have to take it in that time. There should be a clock on goalkeepers' kickouts as well, shouldn't there?
Yeah, because do you bring in the buzzer system, or the hooter system, I should say, and just stop clocks at dead balls or kick-outs on certain occasions? The frees I'm not sure. I presume it wasn't an actual reaction to Morgan in the first half, and Morgan tends to take a long time to come up and actually strike the frees when he comes up to do them. So perhaps that's what Walsh was reacting to. It's like, you're not taking your time now, sort of thing, when they were, I think, trailing at that point. So
I think he was also just laying down the marker, right?
Maybe, yeah. It was a worthwhile yellow card, but I think there's definitely truth in what Morgan is saying. The clocks need to be looked at, and it's also another thing that the referee has control of at the moment, and it's another thing that the referee is keeping an eye on at the moment, which just adds to their workload. All
right, it's 2 minutes past 8. We're talking rugby next here on OTB AM. We're checking in with Gregor Paul in New Zealand in a few moments, and Cian Tracey is going to be in studio right back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
How could a KBC personal loan make a difference to you? Make a difference to your... Make a difference to your... Make a difference to your... Or make a difference to your... Apply for a personal loan with KBC to find out how we can make a difference to you and your pocket. KBC, the bank of you. Lending criteria, underwriting, terms and conditions apply. KBC Bank Ireland plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Let's face it, the Irish summer has serious commitment issues. It's always late, disappears for weeks at a time, and consistently breaks its promises. But not us. At Electric Ireland, we're committed to giving you an 8.5% saving on your gas and electricity year after year after year after year. Visit electricireland.ie/join for the kind of commitment you deserve.
Estimated annual bill €1,736. Average consumption, urban 24-hour, discounted unit rate, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax. Residential, dual fuel, direct debit and online billing. Terms and conditions apply. See electricireland.ie/EAB. Rates at 1st of April 2019, subject to change.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
South Africa playing New Zealand in that first round, like, you know, the way the pool stages are all broken up on that, that game looks like at this stage it's certainly 50-50 that the All Blacks could be beaten in that first game. We could end up potentially playing them in the quarterfinals, and I think that it's a bit early to say because you need to see the form of the pool games, but I think there's two real alternatives in South Africa and England to take on the mantle, and that's why I would be a little bit harsh on New Zealand, is that they're not the clear favourites. In fact, they're far from the clear favourites. They're back in the pool of the top four sides, I'd say.
Yeah, all of a sudden it looks like the World Cup has been blown open by the Rugby Championship. Now, are we overreacting to that? We'll get the New Zealand view from Gregor Paul in a couple of minutes' time. In the meantime, Cian Tracey, the Irish Independent here. Cian, how are you?
Good, Jerry. How are you?
Are we overreacting to a performance where the All Blacks, so if anybody didn't see this, they coughed up 49 points, was it? It was nearly 50 anyway.
Yeah.
And they had a man down for a good 50 minutes.
Just before half-time, Scott Barrett got sent off, so
yeah,
it had an effect. But at the same time, Australia were still on top, I think it has to be said. But in terms of an overreaction, I think it probably has confirmed what we've thought for the last couple of years, that the gap has narrowed. In saying that, I would still massively expect a backlash from New Zealand this weekend, and it's not like New Zealand aren't going to be contenders come Japan, but I think the chasing pack have cut the gap and New Zealand have sort of stepped back a bit. I don't think there's any doubt that they're not as good as they were 4 years ago, which I suppose makes it an more open World Cup, like Liam was saying there, and gives everyone else hope, I guess.
Were you a little bit terrified by watching both games last Saturday in terms of what's actually going on down in the Southern Hemisphere? Like, some of the rugby played in both of those encounters was unbelievable.
Well, yeah, like when you watch the New Zealand game in the morning and then you go to the Aviva later that afternoon, now it's like comparing apples and oranges. second string team in a warm-up game, but
sure.
Yeah, like in terms of the intensity and the physicality that was played at, it looked like a different sport. But at the same time, Ireland are only at the start of their season. They've still got a long way to go. Like Ger said, the red card did have an effect. I even see there overnight Scott Barrett has been suspended for 3 weeks, which is it's probably about right, but it's convenient enough as well, because you know the way the rugby works, where you get a 3-week ban, but it has to count for games, and his games will actually count in the Mitre 10 Cup. Now the question is, would he have played in the Mitre 10 Cup? It allows him to be back for the opening game of the World Cup against South Africa, which is probably just as well, because with Brodie Retallick out as well, if they had been down 2 locks, then you know you're going to see that gap cut even further. So there are a lot of question marks. I think it'll be interesting to get Gregor's sort of take on it. The out half situation is very interesting, I think. While Richie Mwanga has 100% earned his shot, you know, he was outstanding for the Crusaders last season. I don't think it's really worked so far with moving Beauden Barrett back to full back. You could see it last week, Beauden Barrett stepping into first receiver. He is the main playmaker. When he's not getting the ball, you can see that he's getting frustrated. So I think the team selection will be a bit telling this weekend to see which way Steve Hansen goes with that.
Okay, we've got Gregor, Paul. We can go to New Zealand now and talk to Gregor. Good morning to you, Gregor. Good afternoon, good evening to you, where you are. We had you on recently enough before the Rugby Championship, and you were saying don't be surprised if actually New Zealand do lose some games. Is this part of a broader plan to try and bed in new systems, new plans, or is it an old rope-a-dope tactic to try and make the rest of the world forget about how great New Zealand are?
Well, I don't think it was a plan to lose by nearly 50 points on the weekend. Clearly, it's still. I mean, when we spoke last time, there was a sense that the All Blacks are rebuilding and mixing things up in terms of how they want to play the game, and they've also had to mix up their selections the way that most teams are at the moment as they try and work out, you know, who they want to take to Japan, all that kind of stuff. Having said that, Saturday night in Perth was meant to be the moment where the All Blacks put a performance together, and there were, you know, the Bledisloe Cup is very important to them, and they made it very clear that they were there in Perth to win, and maybe with the exception of Retallick and Sonny Bill Williams, that's their best team that they put on the park. And it didn't go particularly well for them. So the views changed a wee bit. And I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, you wouldn't be nuts enough to go and sort of write off the All Blacks and imagine that they've lost one game, therefore it's all curtains for them. I don't think that would be a sort of sensible conclusion to reach. But there is now an element of pressure on this team, the way that there wasn't 2 weeks ago, because they haven't played well for some time now. And they've been rebuilding for too long. There haven't been enough signs that they're on the right track. I mean, there's little flashes here and there, but there's been nothing consistent or nothing impressive and nothing overwhelming. But look, it's the All Blacks, and you never know with these guys. They go to Eden Park on Saturday night, and everything might click for them. And you could bring me back next week, and I could tell you that this team is you know, miles ahead of everyone else, and is going to win the World Cup. So it can change very quickly.
Even if they do put in a great performance next week, though, one thing that the rest of the rugby world, and it seems in particular South Africa, will have seen is that they're not unbeatable. That suddenly the aura that the team 4 years ago and the team 8 years ago had isn't quite there about this group of players. That those teams were all-time great teams. This team is just a good New Zealand team, and by definition are therefore far more beatable than those previous two.
Well, to an extent, I'd agree, but I'd also say I don't think that any All Black team has ever been unbeatable. And, you know, Ireland have proven that, and plenty of other teams. You know, the McCaw team. I mean, they lost enough games to not feel that they were invincible. By the time they got to the World Cup, they were in. You know, they performed particularly well at that 2015 World Cup, and they were probably head and shoulders best team there. Will it be like that this time round? No, I don't think so. But you know, I mean. The current team don't have the depth of experience or the depth of quality that 2015 team did. They've also got a couple of genuine question marks over a couple of areas on the field. Their loose trio and their midfield in particular. When you look at the 2011 team and the 15 team, both of them had Jerome Kano, Richie McCaw, Kieran Reid, you know, one of the great back rows of all time, and then Martin Onu and Conrad Smith in the midfield for both tournaments. So, you know, that makes a phenomenal difference, and they've struggled a wee bit, I would say, to have replaced those combinations. They've got a lot of good players, but they haven't built a combination in either the loose trio or the midfield. And that probably above all else is where they look to me to be missing their flow and their rhythm. They haven't built it because they haven't had any consistency or quality, or enough quality, from those two critical areas on the field.
Yeah. Are you confident enough, though, that there's enough time for a new midfield partnership to emerge and for the back row trio to assert themselves as clear starters, and so therefore be able to build up that sort of cohesiveness that you're talking about all-time great centre partnership, all-time great back row, so whatever happens, it's probably not going to be quite as good as that. Notwithstanding that, there is enough time between now and that game in September against the Springboks for the All Blacks to work that out, is there?
Oh, look, I think so. But it'll be a bit ad hoc. I think they're going to end up playing the loose trio that they started with in Perth, for the simple reason that Artie Savia is just playing so well that you can't keep him off the park. Ditto Sam Cane, and they're not going to move Kieran Reid out of the team. So that's the loose trio. Look, amid all the doom and gloom, there were still some signs in Perth. And you've got to remember there was a red card here, so some of it goes out the window a little bit in trying to make serious analysis, because you got 14 v 15, so you got to be a wee bit wary of that. But there were signs in the first 20 minutes, while the All Blacks tight five, and we'll come back to them because they are a bit of a problem at the moment. Their loose trio, playing three guys like that, having two open sides on the field, they were attacking the breakdown. Every breakdown they had a man going in for the ball, and they made Australia's life difficult there, with the intensity with which they made Australia have to recycle, and they slowed their ball down brilliantly. You'd imagine if they can get their tight five revved up a little bit, keep 15 players on the park, that will probably work quite well for them. So I think that's one element that that they'll stick with, and I think with Savia on the park, you've got this ability to play fast, open rugby. He's a brilliant ball carrier. He's a brilliant ball player. I mean, you can shove him on the wing, as he cropped up plenty of times. Look, I think they've got enough there in that loose trio to think that that's what they'll go with.
Gregor, we just had an image up on screen there a moment ago of Scott Barrett's red card incident. I think you were saying that it was the least deserved red card in history.
Well, I actually just remembered when you rang that I think Jamie Heaslett probably took that award. I forgot about him. He was red carded out here I think he kneeled gently on Richie McCaw's head, but of course it was McCaw's head that he leaned on, so that was the end of him. But look, it wasn't. Everyone will have different views about it, and I thought it was interesting that Eddie Jones made a point of saying he thought it was ridiculous. Michael Cheika was actually quite generous and said, look, I've got quite a lot of sympathy for the bloke, and I think there's a genuine worry here. You remove all nationalities and allegiance to one side. We've got to be a little bit careful come the World Cup that things happen. We've got to make a real distinction between clear and obvious foul play, where there's either reckless intent or a genuine desire to take someone's head off. Players have got to be protected from that. I'm dubious as to whether that was what happened in that particular collision. Look, his technique was a bit, I don't know, it was a bit clumsy. He led with his shoulder. It was dumb, but I don't really think it was a collision full of intent. I think we've got to be careful that guys don't get red carded at the World Cup. And I think every coach in the game is probably looking at that, going, "God, that could be us." You don't want to be going in a quarter-final and have a guy sent off 20 minutes after the game because he accidentally hit someone's head with no real intent. So I think that's what we've got to all be a little bit wary about.
There has been a view in the past, Gregor, that New Zealand have an ability to get away with a little bit more than any other team in World Rugby. Is that ability waning a little bit?
I think there's no doubt in the past, and I think particularly at the end of McCaw's reign, he was so good, wasn't he, at just sort of persuading referees that he never did anything wrong, and that no one in his team ever did anything wrong. And there's no doubt that referees were a little bit in awe of him and wary about penalising the All Blacks. I think that's probably fair enough. I don't think Kieran Reid has that same relationship or that same awe or aura about him. But look, I think it's also a little bit blown out of proportion as well. I mean, I don't think the All Blacks have never been penalised or they've got away with any more team. I think quite often it depends on which set of eyes you're watching a game through and what you want to happen to believe that that's actually the case.
Gregor, last question for you. If I give you a massive pile of chips, would you push them all in on New Zealand at the moment to win the World Cup?
No. I don't think I'd put them all in. It's still whatever else. Like, I don't actually think that they were ever clear-cut favourites, because I've never seen it that way. It's a World Cup. There's really good teams out there. By the way, Australia didn't surprise me at all. They're a good team, and they'll get even better towards the World Cup. So they've always been a contender. South Africa have been a contender for the last year now. I still think Ireland are good enough to win the World Cup. England clearly could win it. Wales can win it. So, I wouldn't put my money on the All Blacks, but I would still I wouldn't put all of it on. But if you name all those teams, probably by default, I would say I would still see them as slight favourites, but probably nowhere near the overwhelming favourites that they were for the last World Cup.
Good stuff, Gregor. Great to talk to you again. Thanks a million, man.
Thank you. Cheers.
Gregor Paul joining us from New Zealand there. Ireland's still good enough to win the World Cup is not a thing that many Irish people feel at the moment. We've been a bit shellacked and shell-shocked from the last 12 months.
Yeah, I don't think anyone sort of wants to even say that anymore, and that probably suits the Irish mentality as well, that we have taken a step back, and hopefully they'll find themselves with a bit of momentum before they go in. But they seem like a bit off at the moment, but there is still time, I think, to go.
What were the takeaways from the weekend game, with the obviously important one being Joey Carbery's injury? Yeah,
I mean, it was so unfortunate. He looked so fresh. Like, he missed so much rugby last season, and he looked, extra fresh because probably he had missed so much. I think the best case scenario is he's going to be out for 4 weeks, worst case 6 weeks. So worst case scenario is he might be a doubt for the Scotland game, but I think they're fairly confident that he'll be fit.
So he's going to the World Cup and he'll be fit at some point during it, is the
100%. And I think even if, let's say right now, they definitively said there's no way he'll play the Scotland game, I think there's still no question that Joey Carbery goes to the World Cup as Ireland's number 2. I think he is far too important. I think he gives you something that Ross Byrne and Jack Carty don't give you, and even Joe Schmidt was touching on it after the game. He can change the way Ireland attack, and I think when we get to the World Cup, we will need to do something different. We saw it again against Italy. There was a couple of times where they were just slow to give the ball out wide, and they're going through the phases, and that's not going to work. I don't think, especially which people aren't really sort of focusing on yet, the conditions in Japan are going to be incredibly testing in that humidity. So this sort of phase after phase rugby isn't going to work. And you saw it with Chris Farrell's pullback pass for Joey Carbery. 9 times out of 10 Chris Farrell might have just trucked that up through the middle and then let's go to another phase. But just a little bit of invention close to the try line, you can see what a difference it makes. But I think for a first run out of the season, and considering the team that was played, I actually thought there was loads of takeaways in it. The game itself was poor, but I think if you went through every single position, we got an idea of something got to do with the World Cup. If you looked at the front row, I think Jack McGrath coming off after 40 minutes, and then Andrew Porter playing on the loose. I think Porter has cemented his place now as that 5th prop. I think it doesn't bode well for Jack McGrath. Dave Kilcoyne seems to have a bit of daylight there. It's been such a sort of amazing fall for grace for Jack McGrath that you think a couple of years ago he's a lion, and he just hasn't been able to find his form. I didn't think he played particularly poorly by any means, but Joe Schmidt said it was a pre-planned decision that he'd only play 40 minutes. I can't imagine he was too happy with that. Even in the second row, I thought Jean Klein, despite what a lot of people thought, and I'm not sure what they expect, and I was writing about it yesterday from a tight headlock. These guys are different to your all singing, all dancing James Rhines, Tyg Burns. He's there to do a job. Joe Schmidt has always wanted a big lumpy tight headlock. So I reckon John Klein has almost booked himself onto the plane there as well. You go to the
at
back.
the expense of who?
Well, I think the 4 locks are going. Your 3 are nailed on: James Ryan, Devin Toner, Ian Henderson. And I think John Klein is going to go as the 4th lock. But I think you have Tyg Byrne then. Is going to go as a hybrid who can play both, which means then a likes of a Rhys Ruddock might miss out. That's just my opinion. I think this is just going on what Joe Schmidt. There's a reason why he's often picked Quinn Roux, in squads. Especially when we come to the Samoa and Russian game, 2 big meaty packs, they might not have much else. He's going to want someone like that, a big lump in the second row. And the scrum went really well, obviously against a poor Italy team, but a lot of that power is coming through the tight headlock, which was Klein. I think Byrne showed again why you can't leave a guy like this out. Ireland have lost so much poaching ability without Sean O'Brien and Dan Levy, and while I don't think Tyg Byrne is going to start, he, like Carbery, he gives you something else. You saw Tommy O'Donnell didn't really get in the poached positions too often. Van der Flyer isn't really a poacher either. He will be the starting 7, but he's not really a poacher. I think that role would be left to O'Mahony, but I think Byrne gives you something else. But it would be so tough, I guess, to leave someone like Rhys Ruddock home. Even if you just move through the backline. Sorry, I'm pretty much going through it all here, but I just thought it was fascinating for such a poor game that there was so many talking points. I thought Marmion is such a favourite of Schmidt. You know, he does the nuts and bolts. I think he will go. I think Luke McGrath looked a bit sluggish at times, but you saw his intelligence with certain trail runs he was running. I think he has certainly enhanced his chances. I think Chris Farrell, of all people, of all players, made the most progress, and he's a very interesting case study. Joe Schmidt played such a massive role in getting him back to Ireland. You know, I think if he had his time over again, he might not have left Ulster as soon as he did. There was just a lot of traffic ahead of him at the time. But I remember talking to him, Chris Farrell, when he was with Grenoble at the time. Bernard Jackman was their head coach, and he was telling me that Joe Schmidt would get clips of his games sent back to him, and Joe Schmidt would be analysing his performances,
right,
and giving him, okay, this is what we would like you to do. This is sort of when the Munster move was on the horizon. So this is the level of detail that Joe Schmidt has gone in to get this guy, you know, up to speed in the systems. And it might just be smaller things, but a French match that no one's watching in the top 14, it just gives you an idea of how far and wide Schmidt cast the net. And I think Farrell playing 12 was really interesting, and what was key as well was that he played with Ringrose. You know, he wasn't thrown in with another rookie as well, because Ringrose is obviously your starting 13. He gave him a chance to play 12 alongside your 13, which gives him a better chance, I think, as well. And I thought he was really impressive.
So is Ringrose your guaranteed 13 and then Ringrose plus one?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that Gary Ringrose is your...
He loves himself Robbie Henshaw, so is the Robbie Henshaw full-back experiment going to make another reappearance in these warm-ups?
Possibly, but I actually think Jordan Larmour actually looked extremely comfortable, more comfortable than probably we have seen him, because we've become so used to seeing him getting the ball and dancing around players, but he was actually stepping into the line a lot more, giving passes off both sides, which is obviously what Schmidt wants. We might see the Henshaw experiment again. I think we've left it a bit late now because it didn't work against England. That, you know, I think Carney and Larmour are your full-backs, and if Andrew Conway, the one thing I can never understand why Andrew Conway doesn't get more of a run at full-back. We saw it again at the weekend. He's just imperious under the high ball. You know, you talk about what Joe wants from a full-back. It's like one of the main things is to be good under the high ball. And I'm amazed that he doesn't get more of a run at full-back, particularly for Munster as well. But I think that's probably fed from the national team down, that the fact that Ireland see him as a winger, that Munster have sort of been playing him on the wing. So yeah, I think it's a bit late to be trying Henshaw. And I think you're also moving... Okay, there probably isn't much between him and Bundy Aki, but I still think Henshaw and Ringrose are your first choice partnership. So to move him out of position, you know, would sort of maybe, it might off kilter the team again, and he didn't look that comfortable, did he, against England? Is there an
implication if Chris Farrell comes that somebody else doesn't make it? And if Larmour is your nailed on second choice fullback, does that mean Andrew Conway is not going to make the squad, or does Conway get in because he also has that cover possibility?
I suppose there's a chance Bo can get in. I guess what we're hearing about Joey Carbery is the 4 to 6 weeks, but like, let's say that was more, or they are more concerned, then that has implications because of how many halfbacks they're going to take. If Carbery goes there with an injury, I don't see how you can travel with just 2 out halves. Whereas I think they might do it because, you know, you could have someone like a John Cooney who could get in there. But I think Chris Farrell, if it was to come down to Chris Farrell and Andrew Conway, while they're not in direct competition, I just think Farrell, you know, he can play the 12 and 13. And even Schmidt referenced after the Italy game at the weekend about Gary Ringrose playing on the wing. Now, he hasn't played on the wing since his Black Rock days, and you know, it's unlikely that he'll feature there, but this is the kind of thing that they're looking at. They want these guys to be playing more than one position, and I think Farrell just gives you so much as a 12 and a 13, because he is this big ball carrier, and like I said, that will be absolutely key in the 2 games against Samoa and Russia. You'd hope that, you know, the other centres will be fit for the first 2 games, but he also has that sleight of touch, which I just mentioned about for the Carbery try, which I think opposition players get so sort of hung up on trying to make a big hit on him, that he actually has that ability to put players into space. So yeah, like Conway and Farrell, they're definitely going for sort of the one place, if you know what I mean, but I think Farrell probably has the edge after his game of the weekend.
Okay, so who, if that's the case, then who are the replacement wingers? You've got Larmour's a replacement winger effectively.
Yeah.
He's in the squad as a back 3. And if Conway doesn't make it, you're going to start with Earls, you're going to start with Jacob Stockdale. and after that you've really only got Larmour, and that's when Ringrose plays a game on the wing or two?
The split is likely to be 17-14, so 17 backs, 14 forwards. So like
17 forwards.
17 forwards. Yeah, 14 backs. So there is scope for both Conway and Farrell to go. I mean, he saw Dave Kearney at the weekend. I'm not sure. I still think he has a long way to go. Mike Haley making his debut, he's got a long way to go, but you could easily have a likelihood where Farrell and Conway go. But I guess it just depends on sort of the halfback will have an implication on that too.
That's the extra one here, the injury to who is at the moment, is it
between Carty and Byrne?
Is it just a straight shootout between those two?
I think it is. I really think it is, but I think it's so hard to pick between them. It was interesting after the game last week, you know, Schmidt had kind of praised a lot of players and he kind of pointed to Carty struggling to get to the pitch of the game. Now, thought it was a bit harsh personally. I thought he did okay when he came on.
Wow.
It was
great.
It was a little bit harsh, and it was a bit of a sort of an insight into, you know, his way of thinking. I was watching the game back, and like he put a lovely couple of kicks in. I don't know, would he have preferred maybe to give the ball out, but I think it's very tight between the two of them. And you know, I suppose we can't forget Sexton's injury profile as well. And then if Carbery's going there with a knock, you have to have a third out half. So I think it was Andy Dunn was on with you guys, I think, after the game, and he made a really good point about Sexton, and I think Wales are actually in a similar situation now with Garrett Anscombe being ruled out, that, you know, Dan Biggar is the obvious next choice, but how many games does Dan Biggar play now over the next few weeks? Because if he gets injured, you're in serious trouble.
But if he doesn't play games, he's going to be undercooked.
It's a catch-22, and that's why these games are they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. So yeah, that's the balance I think that Schmidt's going to have, but I think we will definitely see Byrne and Carty get probably maybe even a little bit more game time, and well, of course they will get more game time, but especially to see that they will have to bring the third out half, so there will be more time for him. Yeah.
When it comes to England and you look at their squad announcement yesterday, first of all, how big a risk is what Eddie Jones has done? How big a risk is it in terms of trusting untried and untrusted players?
Yeah, like when you consider the 4-year cycle that he's had to get this squad, it's amazing really that he has an uncapped player, Rory McConaughey, who was playing sevens up to last year and was actually playing club rugby before that. Like a very interesting story. He won a silver at the Rio Olympics with Britain, but this guy has never played for England. And then you have three guys, Jack Singleton, Willie Hines and Lewis Ludlam, who only made their debuts against Wales. So these are four guys who like haven't been in and around the system, and yeah, like it is a risk. I don't think there's two ways about it, but you just wonder how England have got, with the talent and the depth that they have at their disposal, you'd wonder how they've gotten to a point where they are picking such inexperienced players. Now, this isn't to say that they aren't good players, but we just haven't seen them on the international stage to know how good they are. I suppose the flip side of that is, was he supposed to revert back to like your Chris Robshaw or your Mike Brown, you know, these guys who've had their chance and it hasn't worked before? So on one hand, it's pretty admirable, but I'm not sure like how big of a role any of these four guys are actually going to play in the big games, but it is quite amazing that England, with the depth that they've had, are finding themselves in this situation.
Is it also a weird time to suddenly decide that you're a strict disciplinarian and you know, your players fighting is a big deal for you? Because it never struck me before that this was something Eddie Jones cared about.
Yeah, you'd wonder how serious that incident was, or what actually went on behind the scenes, because Ben Teo has been such a massive part of England, like since he moved over there.
Since he discovered he wasn't Irish/Australian.
And you know, he was in the 2008 World Cup squad for Samoa, and he played underage for New Zealand. So it would have been nice if he got another World Cup.
A true Renaissance man, Ben Teo.
Yeah, I mean, and he was like, remember that picture that was doing the rounds when he was playing with Leinster in the Ireland jersey?
Yeah.
So like, I mean. Yeah, I don't have too much sympathy for a guy like that, but at the same time, yeah, it is amazing. And I suppose probably the fitness of Manu Tuilagi has played a role in that, and you know, he has come back last season and looked like the player that he used to be, so that makes leaving Teo a little bit easier, but it's still a bit mad, isn't it?
If you put Tuilagi and the Vinipolas in the same team, suddenly England, I think, are close to being favourites.
Oh, they're even Gregor.
Especially now what happened with Wales.
Absolutely, like there's a reason why everyone is talking about England. Their power game is just freakish. Like I said, the Vunipolas, and they seem to have, okay, Teo's gone now, but they seem to have a relatively settled backline. I think One player who doesn't really get mentioned that much is Henry Slade. I think he's offered him a totally different dynamic at 13, and they seem to have a good balance. And I don't know if you've seen the videos that they're doing, the sort of behind the scenes videos throughout the summer. It's been really interesting, like 10-minute like sort of YouTube videos, and while of course they're going to paint everything in a good light, it does look like a very sort of happy camp, apart from obviously Teo and Mike Brown having their step to, but it does look like a very tight unit, and I think that they're justifiably going to go there as one of the favourites.
Last question for you. When is the final cut down? Will we know essentially what the World Cup squad is before the final cut down is made? Yeah,
before the England game, I think, is the impression. So we were unlikely to see Ireland's team until the last game against Wales. That's, I think, when you'll see the squad will be named, and you'll also see like the full team, like what the team that's expected to start against Scotland. So a few more weeks, and obviously they're going to Portugal tomorrow for 8 days, so that'll give them another chance to fine tune for the conditions that I was talking about. And even it's interesting, Joe Schmidt, so Ireland's kick-off times for the home games are 2 p.m, and he picked 2 p.m. because that's technically the hottest point of the day. Now, it didn't quite work last Saturday with the rain, but this is the sort of meticulous detail that he's thinking about, that we want to play at the hottest part of the day, but the hottest part of the day in Dublin is a little bit different, I think, to what it's going to be like in Japan.
Yeah, especially with the weather that we had last week or so. Cian, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. It's 31 minutes past 8 this morning. We're going to talk Spanish football and boxing with Gareth A. Davies later on this hour on OTB AM, but it's GAA next. Here's Kieran Donaghy on Dublin's sensational 12-minute spell after half-time in Saturday's All-Ireland semi-final defeat in Mayo.
I was right behind it, looking out from the corner of the canal end, and it was so impressive just how direct they were, how accurate everything was to hand. They're so strong taking you on up front. The point kicking by Paul Mannion, the goals by Con Callaghan, Kilkenny going deep, getting on loads of ball again, pressing up on the kick out, boxing everything in, and just keeping the onslaught coming basically. And obviously then Fenton in the middle of the field running the whole show it was a joy to watch his performance out there. He's a classist, really.
We were sort of saying, for Mayo fans in the stadium, the air probably went out of the place, and Dublin fans just got carried away in the momentum of the whole thing. There wasn't very much Mayo could have done in the midst of it all, bar somebody thinking to go down injured and trying to disrupt the momentum of it.
Yeah, maybe going short, Joe, maybe really looking to engineer a short kick out and just get on the ball, and maybe Rob Henley to come out a bit and play as the extra man back there for a second and just take the sting out of it and see if you can work your way up and get a score. I guess, people talk about responding to goals and, or coming under the wave of attack from goals. If you're a team and you concede a goal, there should be almost a set thing in your head as a unit that, okay, we've conceded a goal, we're going to knock this kick out short. Let the goalie come out and play as a bit of an extra man for a second, pop the ball around, take the sting out of it, and then work it up the pitch and see if you can be really patient and almost treat it like it's very early in the game, that first attack where you really want to get on the scoreboard and you try and work a high percentage shot or get a free.
Yeah.
I think that's what they needed to do.
Yeah, got a bit distracted there by Kieran's t-shirt. If anybody knows exactly what shot it is, you can let us know. Time for us to move on, because it is that time where we preview our power rankings. Specsavers, the official Hawkeye partner of the GAA, have been bringing you Owen's power rankings, the most controversial slot in Irish media over the course of the entire summer.
Yeah, I'm not sure how controversial it's going to be this week. We've only got one mover. We can bring you up the power rankings as we do every week. 33 through to 25, no movement. We're going to update these eventually, but before the year is out, when new managerial moves and all that sort of stuff. But we'll get to that in a few weeks. Move it on from Louth down to Westmeath. Move it on once more, and it's Division 2 Central. We're right down to Galway 9th. So Cavan 10th, Galway 9th, and into the top 10 we've got Meath still in 8th, Cork still in 7th, Roscommon still in 6th. I've moved Tyrone down to 5th and put Donegal back up ahead of them, but I've neglected to move Mayo down. That was the big decision this week, and Kerry 2, Dublin 1 staying where they are. So the top 3 stay where they are. And I don't know, I agonise over this. Are Donegal a better team than Mayo? I'm basing this on what happened in Castlebar, naturally. But I'm also basing this on that the view that potentially in hindsight Donegal would have actually been a better matchup for Dublin, or might have given a better game for a bit longer against Dublin. But then I arrived at the conclusion that actually no, Dublin's 12-minute spell against Mayo in the third quarter on Saturday was nigh on impossible. As Kieran Donaghy said there, Mayo could have been a little bit more street smart. They could have gone down with a couple of injuries here and there.
They could have kicked those ball's not wide and into Cluxton's hands.
Yes.
I had a great Twitter interaction last night with somebody who was like, I was saying, Paddy Durcan surely has to get an All-Star. And somebody immediately tweeted me back on, he was responsible for 1-3 off Dublin scores the weekend. He was at fault for 1-3 of Dublin's scores the weekend. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, kick the ball into Cluxton's hands. He's at fault for Con's goal.
Wow,
like,
it's one way of looking at it.
I mean,
kicking the.
Tommy says it's a good way of looking at it.
Well, like it's.
I mean, cause and effect does not work like that. There's like 14 other things that have to happen, including a genius finish, for that to result in a goal. It's like 12 other people's fault more than it is his fault.
Someone who might agree with you is just it was just some voice around me on Sunday when, remember, Tommy Walsh had that effort that went a million miles wide. A fellow was like, good man Tommy, kick the ball wide, kick the ball dead.
Okay.
That the reaction would have been totally different had it actually landed in Niall Morgan's arms, and a restart would have begun again, and Cluxton can do that just to a different level altogether. I do think it's extremely harsh on Paddy Durcan, and I think he is nailed on for an All-Star at this point. He's going to take two of the best half-back performances ever in the final, outside of Jack McCaffrey, he was also nailed on, to get Paddy Durcan out of that
I don't think it's possible at this stage.
No, I don't think it is either, because he's been absolutely unbelievable, really. But it's one way of looking at it, and really, is that how teams are now looking at it, that you have to take your opportunity against Dublin. You have to get into the scoring zone, because at least in the scoring zone, you're not going to put the ball short.
Yeah, except that there's 4 other people who could make tackles along the way, and there's a keeper who can make a save. There's loads of other things that can happen. A game is full of a million different moving bits, and if you're going to start having cause and effect be something that happens 2 minutes before something else happens, okay, fair enough. If that's how you want to look at life, it's a bit weird to me.
Well,
to blame Paddy Durcan directly for the goal. He says he's at fault for it.
Okay, it's a bit harsh, but I can perhaps, sometimes nuance gets lost on Twitter. Believe it or not, sometimes it does.
No.
And I'm going to give that person, whoever it is, a bit of a benefit of the doubt that if you give Stephen Cluxton the ball into his hands, it's a free kick out for him. It's like deciding not to push up on the kick out. It's like he's suddenly got 3 or 4 options for him, and he's just as good with the ball out of his hands.
It takes a beautiful kick pass from Michael Darragh-Macaulay, a brilliant fetch from Mannion, who swoops down to get it. He lays off perfectly in stride to Kilkenny, and then it takes an absolutely brilliant pirouette from Conor O'Callaghan and a pinpoint accurate, almost behind the back of O'Callaghan pass from Kilkenny, at which point he's still got to finish at the near post past a 6'4" goalkeeper. But yeah, I definitely blame Paddy Durcan for that first goal. There's definitely a case that Mayo need to fall further in this, and it's not just to do with the game at the weekend, it's to do with the end of the era. That next year, if we're doing these, there'll be a case when all of the retirements have actually come through, that Mayo are 7th or 8th now, and that they'll be outperforming to get to an All-Ireland semi-final next year.
Well, let's get to I think we'll update these at the end of the season and make them predictive for the year 2020. This, I have made a decision. Finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks, have arrived at a conclusion as to what these power rankings should be. They're based on what we've seen this summer and on recent summers. The evidence that teams have put down, the run of form that they put down, the teams that they've beaten, and I just do think if there was a third place playoff, would Mayo win it in Croke Park against Donegal? I think they might just edge it, all things considered. And I think they deserve to be third. I think top 2 have kind of moved away now, really, at this point. Tyrone deserve to be down to 5th. Maybe Roscommon, there could be an argument that they're a bit high at 6th. Meath at 8th and Galway at 9 perhaps could have a bigger argument there. But yeah, Tyrone down to 5th is the mover this week.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think you could definitely make the case that Mayo are gone now. That what we saw was the murder of Mayo at the weekend, and that we'll come in retrospect to go, it took them 3 years to get back to the level where they were competitive again.
Would you be more worried as a Mayo fan if they had a raft of retirements this winter, or they didn't have a raft of retirements this winter?
It depends. It depends on what role the players are going to have. If players are sticking around for a while but nowhere near the team, but they're going to be in training and they're going to be setting culture for the younger players coming through, I think that's important. I think that actually this is an under-remarked, this Dublin thing is going to last forever is generally the consensus. We're talking 9 out of the next 10 All-Irelands potentially, or 6 out of the next 10. What was your figure?
I think they'll do 6 in a row and then 7th will be stopped.
I think that Jim Gavin's importance in this can't be overstated. And I think that the older lads who have come from an era where starter earwigs was a real thing, where they got beaten 17 points by Kerry that afternoon, like there is a drive that those players have that the younger players won't have. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that winning culture when Brogan goes, when McManaman goes, when Connolly goes, when any of the rest of those lads who are in their 30s start to go, okay, I've won 6 All-Irelands or 7 or however many it gets to. I don't think it's guaranteed that the younger lads coming through will maintain that, just because it's hard. We've seen great teams before. It doesn't automatically roll on to the next dynasty because you were part of the original dynasty.
Part of me agrees with that, and I think that the big departure that will lead to perhaps a waning in that ridiculously high level of winning culture is Jim Gavin's departure. That's the only one, really. I think with Jim Gavin at the helm of this team, it doesn't matter how star-studded the conveyor belt is, they will continue to be the best team in Ireland as long as he is Dublin manager. Yeah,
now, I think, so Desi Farrell and Jason Sherlock are probably the most likely candidates to replace him at this stage, and at least there is some continuity involved in that. Farrell would have had a lot of those players at under 21, and Jason Sherlock is clearly a very important part of the backroom team at the minute.
Yeah, there's something that we want to put to Graham Hunter later on. I'm not sure did you read Miguel Delaney's piece last week about Manchester City, but there was a line in it that Pep Guardiola wouldn't allow his backroom staff to come back from the off-season 1 kilogram overweight. I would not be surprised if Jim Gavin didn't let his backroom staff coming back 1 kilogram overweight. Jason Sherlock in his pre-season training, I'd say, is just as rigorous as any of the players.
All right, Specsavers, the official Hawkeye partner of the GA, bringing you the power rankings every week. Now it is 8:41. You're listening to OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Up next, we're going to be joined by boxing journalist and broadcaster Gareth A. Davies. To set the scene, here's the promoter Eddie Hearn at a press event in London. Here's how he's framing the decision to bring the big fight, the Joshua Ruiz rematch, to Saudi Arabia.
We have to realise that there is another world out there outside of Cardiff and Madison Square Garden, and we have an obligation to grow the sport of boxing to new areas, to new regions. And for me, this event could change boxing forever, because if Saudi Arabia are going to invest in these kind of fights with the population that they have, with the potential to grow the sport of boxing, you could be seeing a big change in the dynamics of the sport, and that's something that really truly excites me. So for us, when we realised Saudi Arabia was serious about the sport of boxing, we then looked into the logistical side, and quite frankly that blew our mind as well. And look at the events, look at the organisations that have been there before us. Many of these we spoke to in preparation for this announcement and this event. Formula One with the Formula E, of course, the European Golf Tour, the Italian Super Cup, the World Boxing Super Series, the WWE. Everybody has enjoyed that experience from an event perspective, from a fan perspective, but from a logistical experience as well.
Gareth A. Davies, good morning to you. How you doing?
Very well, gents. How are you?
Yeah, good. Eddie Hearn sounding a lot like some of the great promoters from the 50s, 60s and 70s who brought fights all around the world because there was money on the table from those countries to try and bring a bit of glamour and glitz.
Exactly. I mean, you know, I don't want to compare him to Don King and the British businessman John Daly when they took the Rumble in the Jungle to Zaire in 1974 with Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. But, you know, I mean, there are kind of parallels, if you like, with Mobutu Sese Seko, the tyrant, if you like, and you know, the tyrant and leader of Zaire at the time. I mean, and because in many ways, in the last 4 days since the fight first broke, and I did break it last Friday that that the fight was on, the Ruiz-Joshua rematch was on. You know, there has been a lot of condemnation, and Amnesty International obviously bringing up things like the gruesome murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the director.
Oh, just having some trouble with Gareth's line there. We'll get him back in just a second.
And I think, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now, actually. You've come back there, yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying about, since the fight was first announced, Amnesty International, you know, have brought up the murder of, you know, of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist, the treatment of women in Saudi Arabia, the war with Yemen, a lot of civil rights issues. And, Eddie Hearn is playing a very kind of straight back to it and saying, look, we knew there'd be controversies. We knew that some people would be unhappy about us going there. But the bottom line is Anthony Joshua wants to expand into the world. We agreed with Andy Ruiz and took him to a neutral venue. But also the bottom line with this, I think there's just so much money on the table from the Saudi sports organisations that they decided to take it.
Who is that money on offer to? Is it mostly in the purse that the fighters receive, or how does that work? What is the business behind that?
Well, there's a huge site fee, I believe, to be in the region of 40 to 50 million pounds, that the majority of which will go to Anthony Joshua. Andy Ruiz Jr. is getting a purse of £7.5 million, $9 million, to defend the three belts, the IBF, WBA and WBO titles that he won on that seismically shocking night at Madison Square Garden on June the 1st when he put Anthony Joshua down 4 times. So I fully expect that once the Sky box office coffers are in as a pay-per-view event in prime time in the UK, so it'll be around midnight in Saudi, and the money is negotiated with DAZN, the digital streaming service, the over-the-top streaming service with America. I fully expect Anthony Joshua to earn double what he's ever earned before, probably over £50 million, I would say, for this fight. Extraordinary, really, for a challenger to the belts, but that's his draw, and that is why so much attention is being focused on Anthony Joshua. There have been 3 fights in Saudi Arabia in the last year, with the World Boxing Super Series with George Groves and Callum Smith, obviously won by Callum Smith, and Amir Khan against Billy Dibb last month. But the focus is on Joshua because he is such a big, pivotal commercial and sporting figure.
How much does Eddie Hearn make from a fight like this, Gareth? Do we ever get an idea?
Well, I'm not sure, actually. We only ask about all the boxers, but I'm sure the cut is significant. I mean, remember Eddie Hearn signed an 8-year deal with DAZN that is reputed to be worth $1 billion. He's got $120 million a year to put cards together for DAZN. He'll be getting a pretty penny for this contest. I don't know the exact amounts. I can try and find out today. I'm on the way to a press conference. I doubt whether he'll tell me.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll talk to you about that press conference in a minute. I want to play you this before we move on. It's promoter and former TV executive Lou DiBella, who was in studio with us last week on Off the Brawl. Here he is talking about how he sees the heavyweight picture. He's talking with Andy Lee, and his new recruit Joe Ward is also in studio. Have a listen.
What's your view on the heavyweight mix at the moment? You had Deontay Wilder. I don't think you're affiliated with him anymore.
No.
So you're a neutral arbitrator in this whole thing.
I am actually at this point. I have neutrality. I think the 2 best heavyweights in the world right now, they're completely different. One's a pure boxer, one's a pure puncher. But the 2 best heavyweights in the world right now are Wilder and Fury. And I think that's unequivocal. I actually do not put Joshua, even if he wins a rematch, in that same category. I think he could be outboxed fairly easily by Tyson if he doesn't get caught. And I don't think he has the punch resistance to go 12 rounds with Deontay Wilder, even if he wins 11 rounds. I don't think has that punch resistance. But I saw stuff that night that spoke to me of like self-confidence and questioning himself. There was stuff I saw in that Joshua fight that made me think to myself, yeah, you have the rematch clause, and you probably, because of the politics of boxing, you probably need to exercise it.
If you promoted him, would you have the rematch?
I was... No would have been my initial answer, but then you have to look at the politics of the sport.
If he walks
it's
away.
Not even looking bad. I wouldn't care about looking bad. If it was just looking bad, I would not do it immediately. You may not get that opportunity for years.
Yeah, there's a bit in that, Gareth, what Lou DiBella is saying there. Just the first thing that kind of strikes me is that this isn't actually that much of a hot take, that Anthony Joshua isn't in the top 2 heavyweights in the world right now. I'm sure this has seeped into Anthony Joshua and his camp, and they know that this is being said about him. Is that going to be an issue now? Is what he's saying a self-confidence issue? Is it something that is actually going to grind away at him rather than inspire him to come back and prove people wrong?
Well, everything Lou's saying there is right. I agree with him. I think that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder are the two most dangerous heavyweights in the world. One is the biggest puncher, certainly we've seen for a very long time. And the other is a fine boxer. And, Wilder first and Fury second on that. But I think Tyson Fury is arguably the best boxer in the world at heavyweight. But what I would say is this. It's a high-risk, high-reward fight, this rematch with Andy Ruiz immediately. Yes, I understand the conventional wisdom in boxing that you should build back and not go in against a guy who has outboxed you and put you down 4 times. It's not like it was a flash knockout. He was outboxed by Ruiz very cleverly for 3 or 4 rounds. But I think that as I say, the risk is huge, but the reward is huge. Lou is, I think, telling you porkies, because if he had the same boxer in the same situation and he had one opportunity to win 3 belts back and earn £50 million, he'd be doing exactly the same for his boxer as well. Promoters are able to talk out of both sides of their mouths when they're on one side of the fence or the other. Yes, self-confidence could be an issue. I was with Anthony Joshua last Thursday doing some filming with him. He looks leaner and lighter. He's got to be faster. Yes, there are risks involved. This is the moment. In a way, this is the biggest fight of his career, because this is the moment where it either slides under the canopy and he becomes one of those guys that grew and grew and then he reached his limits, or he finds himself resurgent. There is something special about him. We always knew he was a work in progress. And I think he's exposed by Ruiz, and I think he got exposed that week in New York by not really taking Andy Ruiz seriously. He's a much smaller man, just over 6 foot, very tubby looking. It's like as if Anthony Joshua was staring across the ring at Jer or me. Do you know what I mean? But the guy is a brilliant boxer, and he showed that on the night against Anthony Joshua. And Joshua didn't take him seriously, but he will the second time. I think it's fascinating. The whole scenario is going to be fascinating anyway, because you are going to have human rights groups complaining about him going there, and that Saudi authorities are sports washing, as the term they use when they bring all those sports there. You are going to have the world watching to see if Anthony Joshua is this behemoth in the division. We know he's a commercial success, but can he be the same as a fighter? It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, look, the sports washing thing is they absolutely deserve to be charged with that, because they're clearly facilitating the Saudi state. Just on the point about where he is at the moment, there's also the possibility that he got into boxing to become rich. He's become rich. That's never going to disappear. He's going to be marketable for the rest of his life. Sometimes something breaks in a boxer, and it felt a little bit like the post-fight interviews and the pre-fight interviews were of a piece with the performance that he put in against Ruiz, and that perhaps he's just not that into boxing as much as he needs to be if he wants to be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and take on Wilder and Fury in a way that we thought was going to happen 18 months ago.
I'm sure he does want to take them both on. I mean, he's a really competitive man. You cannot get to where he's got to, as you say, as a guy that took up boxing seriously at the age of 17 and got to where he's got in the last 12 years without having serious athleticism, real power, and real desire. I mean, he does put himself through the mill. I think, he's not a natural boxer. He has to learn things. He's naturally competitive. I still think the Wilder and Fury fights will take place. I do believe that he could win the rematch. I think it's a 50-50 fight. I think personally, to make it easier for him, they should have brought the fight to Cardiff if they could have. I think that would have given him more advantages. He's been through the rhythm and the rituals there twice already in front of 80,000-90,000 people. He's been successful. He's never lost in the UK. But I think the bottom line with this is I think they've realised that if they are going to lose to Andy Ruiz the second time, they want a massive payout. But I don't think they do believe they're going to lose. And when I spoke to Joshua last week, he doesn't believe he's going to lose. He believes he's going to be cleverer this time. And if he's got Andy Ruiz hurt, or even knocked down as he did in that third round in New York, he's not going to pounce on him and be reckless, which is what he was. He was very reckless in that contest.
All right, Gareth, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Always a pleasure, gents.
It's Gareth A. Davies there from the Telegraph, talking to us about what's happening with the heavyweight division at the moment. The press conference that is on the way to is either the signing of Billy Joe Saunders or Love Island's Tommy Fury by Eddie Hearn, and no doubt we'll bring you some news on that a little bit later as the day goes on. Okay, time for us to turn our attention to the Electric Ireland Minor Championships. The All-Ireland Minor Football semi-finals were last weekend. Kerry's incredible run came to an end as they lost by a point to Galway. Galway will face Cork in the final, who got the better of Mayo. So the three contenders this week for the Electric Ireland Minor Football of the Week are Patrick Campbell of Cork, who was Saturday's man of the match. He kicked scores at vital times and was heavily involved as Cork got on the front foot against Mayo. He finished with a total of a goal and 2 points. Jonathan McGrath of Galway is the Galway cornerback, outstanding, as Kerry were limited to just 13 points. That's their lowest total all year in the Tribesmen's semi-final win over the Kingdom man of the match there, as you can see. And Devin Burns, the Kerry goalkeeper, while Kerry's long unbeaten run ended, Burns couldn't be faulted, kept a clean sheet and made some brilliant saves to deny Galway goals. Devastation in Kerry, or kind of an acceptance that, you know, all good things must come to an end?
Oh, definitely the latter. You can't be critical of a bunch of 16-year-olds going out and like actually having that burden on their shoulders. Over the year, it's like 30, 31, 32. You're just counting every single game, and they will be absolutely gutted this week. And I think Devin Burns getting nominated kind of suggests that Galway did have chances. Perhaps if I was looking at it in a one-eyed way, Kerry did have a lot of chances as well to certainly force the game to extra time and beyond, perhaps. So I don't know, but you can't be too critical of it. Like it's especially with the drop in the year over the last 2 years as well. But it was getting pretty excited near the end when the game was in the balance. Cork were unbelievable on Saturday night. I'm not sure.
They really were. I saw a good bit of them actually.
Yeah, I saw pretty much all of it, and they were absolutely fantastic. They were brilliant in the Munster final as well. It's interesting that you have the two beaten provincial finalists going up against one another in the final. I think with Cork,
so Kerry beat Cork in the Munster final.
Yeah, and Cork went into the pin of their collar.
Right.
A couple of weeks after Kerry beating them by like 20-something points.
Right.
So they're kind of an unknown quantity. The thing about this Cork team at the moment, I think they've quietly been putting together a conveyor belt. There's been a situation where, like in both sports, but there's been a situation like the senior football in the last decade where Cork, there's an argument to be made, were consistently at times the second best team in the country, except they just had the neighbour next door that was doing better stuff. And I think that was the case in minor football over the last couple of years. They've been getting decent enough games off Cork, and I think that's why we're seeing this team come through.
The under-20s team.
The under-20s team, and a couple of players at senior level as well who are quite young.
This is the under-20s team that should have been up against Clifford and O'Shea, right?
Exactly.
This is their last year at under-20s, is it?
Not O'Shea, but Clifford's second year.
Okay. Yeah. So they would have been up against him at minor every year, and he would have been like, you know, dribbling from midfield, bouncing it over lads' heads and kicking it into the back of the net.
Exactly. Yeah.
3 or 4 times a game. So you can see why they maybe didn't win All Irelands in those couple of years. But obviously they're coming forth, and they are definitely coming in hurling football as well. Like you can see the underage conveyor belt coming through. So whatever they did to organise at club level suggests that Cork in the next 5 years are going to be a dual county with real threat to go deep in both competitions.
I think so, and I think in the short term I think they've got every chance of winning the minor championship this year, to be honest.
Alright, so this Sunday the Electric Ireland minor hurling final takes place. It's Kilkenny against Galway at Croke Park, 1 o'clock. It's live on TG Car. Just a reminder to keep an eye out. The championship haircut outside Croker this Sunday with Electric Ireland, open from 11:30 until throw-in of the minor final at 1 o'clock. It's going to be located on the Cusick stand side. So if you want to get your buzz cut or your fade or whatever it is that you kids are getting these days, then make sure you make it over to the championship haircut stand. It's outside Croke Park this Sunday with Electric Ireland, and just located at the Cusick stand side. A reminder, of course, you can still vote for the midfielders in our Electric Ireland Minor Jubilee 15. So at the moment, Noel McGrath on 46%, Ger Farrer on 34%. So the Michael Rice fans, Kilkenny, let's be having you. And Willie Marr, who Michael Rice said was like an absolute legend, went to St Kieran's in Kilkenny. So obviously they claim a little bit of credit from him. He's currently trailing on that one. So you can have your say in the midfield position for the Electric Ireland Jubilee 15 of the greatest minor hurlers from the last 25 years. We already picked the goalkeeper and the defenders. And so here are your midfielders. Noel McGrath on 46%. Looks like being able to celebrate at least once this week, irrespective of what happens later on. So that is it from our minor update this week. We'll obviously be talking about who the players of the week are from the Electric Ireland Minor Hurling Final this time next week, and we'll bring you the results of the Jubilee 15 midfield poll in the next day or two. Now, Graham Hunter is next with us on OTBM, but first, the love-in that Harry Maguire is getting from almost everybody. Here's our own Kenny Cunningham, who has definitely drunk the Kool-Aid. Have a listen.
They impressed me. They didn't put a foot wrong. Maguire, he didn't show me anything I didn't think he already had, Kev. When he went in there, I knew what they were buying. They're buying a very good, not just a very good ball-playing centre-half, probably the best ball-playing centre-half in football at the moment, I'd suggest, because he's the type of player who not only can travel in possession into midfield and actually make a pass when the pressure comes, but he actually go beyond people. He didn't do that too much now at the weekend. He was happy enough just to pop the ball into midfield or just step forward 10-15 yards, commit an opposition midfielder, then work it to another player. But even that is a big plus for Manchester United, because of the past couple of years, Kev, they've probably been the worst. The top 6 teams, they've been probably the worst in terms of trying to play out the back and play up the thirds up the pitch. They just haven't been able to do it. They haven't had certainly the central defenders capable of receiving the ball, certainly under any type of pressure, and taking the ball forward or actually playing through the lines. So when I say Manchester United, I was very impressed in terms of the counter-attacking style. That's not to say that I think Manchester United are a one-trick pony. They're only a counter-attacking team, because with Harry Maguire coming into the team, he's given them another dimension in terms of being able to play through the thirds. Now Paul Pogba is looking back at his centre-halves, knowing he doesn't have to go now and get the ball and start attacks. He can stay 10, 15, 20 yards away from Harry Maguire up the pitch, and now Maguire's good enough to fizz those balls into him a little bit higher up the pitch.
Yeah, there you go. High praise from Kenny Cunningham for Manchester United's new signing, but high praise from former Manchester United centre-back all over the papers this morning as well.
Yeah, a headline in the Examiner this morning: can Maguire be United's Van Dijk? Asked the question, and it's the most over-egged comparison ever in the last couple of weeks because of the transfer fee. But on a footballing sense, Johnny Evans, who of course would have played with Maguire at Leicester, has weighed in, and he says you can see comparisons in their games. Both are great in the ball, and Harry's got explosive pace people don't see. Everyone will compare transfer fee, so it's difficult to judge transfer fee nowadays. We're all human, and it's weird. We get traded for money. In the transfer market, it's all supply and demand, and things can go up and down at any moment. He doesn't have any worries about how he plays. He just wants him to be judged on what he does rather than the transfer fee. And the Van Dijk thing isn't as ridiculous as people might say.
Explosive pace that people don't see.
Yeah.
Explosive pace. He's literally the first person on the planet that's ever said Harry Maguire has explosive pace.
Also, as well, is explosive pace invisible?
I don't know.
I think you should probably be able to identify that somebody's got an explosive pace. But it's been, what a debut for him. And like Liverpool fans, I'm sure, like twitching in their seat at the moment between the Kieran Tierney, Andrew Robertson comparisons over the last couple of days, and now Harry Maguire living up to the Van Dijk billing. Definitely won't get annoyed whatsoever with that.
It's 9:03. Graham Hunter is with us this morning. Graham, good morning to you. How you doing?
Fellas, morning.
Explosive pace, imperceptible to the human eye, says Johnny
people
Evans.
know that with me. Thank you. Let's move on.
What do you make of Harry Maguire before we do move on?
Okay, well, so I listened to some of Kenny, and Kenny always makes sense. So there wasn't anything to disagree with there. The thing I think that's been underplayed is character. He's patently a better than average footballer. He's patently somebody who I really like the tendency. And when you were talking about there, Robertson, Tierney, Liverpool were very torn, I know, because I spoke to them in the process of buying. They couldn't quite decide. But then they decided, and they decided on experience. Robertson, more time in England. They felt more accustomed, more acclimatised. Andy Robertson has grown and grown and grown, never stopped growing as an athlete or a footballer or a competitor since his move. I think that, although they're just two guys linked by having played together, I think Maguire is somebody who, at least in my judgment, has never stopped growing since he moved up each time, each demand, whether it be Leicester or England or his one game for United. And when I look back at how Ferguson began to build United, he never ignored footballing qualities. Those were patently always his primary criteria. But everybody knows now, and I'm only repeating it because I think it bears comparison with Maguire. United, for some considerable years now, haven't just been listless and, in some cases, inadequate off the pitch. They're outright winner character, their outright redoubtable character on the pitch has been in question. I think what they bought in Maguire partly is that. I'm not saying that he's automatically Steve Bruce back in the day from Norwich, but I see things in Maguire which I haven't listened to being analysed or talked about properly yet, in that I think he's got... So, for example, Kenny's point was a technical point, saying Maguire will allow Pogba to play in a different area of the pitch and expect a different type of service pinged into him. Fine, that's a good point. But there will be, in my opinion, and again, you both open, as are all your viewers, listeners, come back to me in 6 weeks or 6 months and say you were wrong. But I thoroughly believe that we will see a different attitude around him. I think he's a rock upon which other people build more solid performances, build their own confidence. And this is a young, fledgling, in development squad, not just side. And I think that there was huge value in Maguire, huge value. It's patently clear that City wanted him. Ergo, we are looking at a player whose passing skills and his ability to beat a press, but also whose defensive skills have been validated by judges beyond those at Manchester United, who in recent years haven't always been your touchstone for brilliant transfer market work. So I as a consumer of football, somebody who loves watching development in football, wherever it may be, I'm fascinated by the Maguire story. I'm not a United fan, not by any means. I genuinely think that, well, I'll be surprised if he is not one of the success stories of this season. Good move.
Alexis Sanchez famously, according to United We Stand, complained about his legs getting cold because there was a fridge close to his seat in the locker room, right? I expect that if Harry Maguire comes in and injects something into the squad, then these complaints don't happen. And that's the type of stuff. Look, it's impossible to analyse this properly because you're never in the dressing room. You don't see the impact that somebody and him and somebody else forming a management clique that suddenly doesn't accept nonsense.
All right, Jeff, I can't argue with that, because one of the things each of us put out there year in, year out is that the access that we're denied, whether it be to changing rooms, which is a bit further than we got, or training grounds, can diminish our ability to commentate accurately, to build ideas, to build arguments. But when you interview these players as regularly as we do, you can build predictive models. So to say exactly Alexis stops moaning and gets his finger out because Harry Maguire is sitting next to him in the dressing room, okay, fine, you make your point, that isn't an automatic, but we can predict there are enough models to tell us that some players, whether it be Alexis or not, will shut up, will work harder, will feel that Maguire is also somebody that they're scared in due course to bring a bad performance into at halftime. I'm not calling him Roy Keane, but these positive ripples in a pond, and it's not all on Maguire. There are characters in that team. But I look at people in United's first 14 players who I think are looking for leadership, are looking to be told you can do more than you're doing, or believe in yourself more. Yeah. I genuinely think that's the state that they're in. And Maguire is one piece in that puzzle, particularly having lost a gritty Rottweiler competitor like Ander Herrera. So, in my view, Maguire matches pictures that we've seen before that cause multiple benefits beyond simply what he does on the pitch.
We want to talk to you this morning as well, Graham, about Pep Guardiola, and the big storyline around Pep going into the season is him going for the 3 in a row, Manchester City going for the 3 in a row. It will be his third 3 in a row if he does this, with Bayern and Barcelona already in the books. So it seems like a fairly significant number for him, Graham. Like, is this something that he sees as a situation of finality for him, finally getting the three-peat done with a club?
I think that the first thing that ever since I began watching him as a footballer, and then being near enough to study him or interview him, he has always, it's not a new thing that he puts a weight on being domestic champion. That was the thing that he predominantly did over conquering Europe or even winning European trophies as a footballer. Ever since he's been a coach, he has put a massive premium and has never, in decision making, has never hidden a league team in order to prepare for a big European team, unless the league is in the bag. So the fact that it's 3 in a row, and the fact that I don't know, very few teams, I can't number it. It's only 3 clubs have done it before in English history. It's a number of that order. The stat escapes me, and therefore we could paint a picture, which I think would be false, of him reaching for history, and this is very important and is part in the tapestry of English football. I don't believe that at all. He believes that being domestic champion, reaching for week in, week out perception, and building people's around him, the footballers, unwillingness to accept anything other than elite performances from them every day in training and in matches. I think he's always believed that's what builds you European victory. Now, the evidence at Bayern Munich would have been, well, it didn't. And so far it hasn't in England. But I think that his perception, and I absolutely trust on that his number one priority is to win the Premier League again. I have no question that that's the truth he's telling us. And it's what will be at the academy, it's what his footballers, if they're in any doubt, will be being told. However, I think if we look at the law change this year, where even an accidental handball is, you can't score like Llorente did in that mad quarter-final of the Champions League. You change that. You do a sliding doors moment on Llorente's goal for Spurs. And not only am I quite convinced, having been at the Ajax semi-final against Spurs, watched their level of inexperience, how tired they got at the end, I have no question City would have dominated the semi-final, would have played up. Who knows what would have happened in the final? It wouldn't have been Spurs. It would have been Manchester City. They're in a final. Pep's first Champions League final, since, I don't know, 2011? And therefore, I think we were talking about the thinnest of margins that City were competing in a Champions League final. I think that they are now deeply better positioned to compete for both the league and Europe with Rodri in their team. I'm not putting all of it on one set of shoulders, but he is not only an exceptional athlete, a terrific footballer, but in exactly the position where City were lacking. And therefore, in my opinion, Pep's drive to win the Premier League, drive for excellence, will, I think, in this instance, take him to, it's a long-term prediction. I do see, if the draw keeps them apart, I see this as being a Manchester City-Liverpool Champions League final. That's my absolute clear-cut view in it. The draw could screw me up, so could form, so could injuries. But that's how close I think City are to going to the Champions League final. I think Istanbul next May.
You talk about that pursuit of excellence, Graham, and I was just mentioning this earlier on. Like, one of the stories that seems to have emerged from pre-season is that Guardiola said to one of his backroom staff members to not come back from to pre-season a kilogram overweight. Not a player, a member of his staff. Like, is this unusual? Is this something that we've seen from Pep in the past in terms of the meticulous level of detail he goes to achieve that level of excellence?
Yeah, that's something that I wouldn't be able to comment on, because I have never heard tell. I'm trying to think across his staff. He has Rodolfo Borrell. He has one member of staff who is normally shaped, shall I say, compared to the pin-thin athletes that he's normally surrounded by. And I haven't seen Rodolfo having any trouble with Pep whatsoever. I've never heard the quote. I don't know who lodged it, and therefore I won't contest it. But he's. What I do know is that he's extremely diligent, and it's not vanity, but I know that he hates it if he himself puts on, I think maybe a quarter of a kilo or whatever, or a tenth of a kilo, but he prefers to look well in his outfits. He's stylish. He has a healthy competitive vanity about his own looking, how he looks as he ages. But no, do I think that he believes... Well, I do remember Alex Ferguson not hiring Martin Jol because he said he couldn't put a guy of Martin Jol's weight, he was heavier then than he was when he became Spurs manager. He rejected him. Ferguson, explained on the record that he didn't want that guy in his coaching team, that it might affect players around him. Do I think Pep thinks that way? Can I say I'm unconvinced?
Wow, I did not know that about Martin Jol. The other big, there's been multiple different soap operas that have been ongoing over the course of the summer, but one that remains still to be finalised is the situation with regards to Neymar. We understand there's a lot of interest in Neymar, but at the moment not much business being done. How close are we to a deal to take Neymar out of his Parisian hell?
Oh, I do. Let them eat cake, Jar. Let them eat cake. I do. I hear you. Your heart bleeding for the poor old Brazilian. How close are we? The best I can give you, if you want a countdown, is September 2nd when the market here closes. There's progress every day in that, without any question whatsoever, Real Madrid are knee-deep in trying to persuade Neymar that if he comes back, it should be to Bernabeu, not to Camp Nou. There is no question that at the latest, this Thursday, when I think the European Club Association meets in England, maybe in Liverpool, there is an opportunity for Barca's executives and Paris Saint-Germain executives who do not get on. There is not an entente cordiale between those two clubs because of a wide variety of things. Views on the Champions League, views on ownership, the way in which Barcelona gloated over the 6-1 win to turn the tie around in the Champions League, the Neymar move, Thiago Silva, who was going to be blah, 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 on and on and on. There's a bad feeling between the two clubs. Paris Saint-Germain, in my view, albeit that Tuchel after... did you guys listen to Tuchel after the 3-0 defeat of Nîmes? He was... listen, he's a quixotic, mischievous guy, Tuchel. And he was like, wow, all I really want Neymar back in the side. And if he's not here, then I'll be really upset and it'll be best for all of us. But the market's still open, so we might have to resign ourselves to losing him. To my mind, Tuchel is doing what is a wise thing in that, like you, he's like, bloody hell, when is this ever going to finish? And if it doesn't finish by September 2nd, I've got this bugger again. So there's a little bit of painting himself out of a corner there. But do I expect him to stay at Paris Saint-Germain or start the season? No, there's enough of a will. Between Real Madrid and Barcelona, that's where I think he'll end. Not Juventus, not Bayern Munich, none of that nonsense. I just can't see anything else other than that. But there's 2 points I think are worth making. And I apologise if you've made these repeatedly in the show. One, this perpetual circus around Neymar, albeit that he's a footballer that we can constructively criticise. And as a man, he's remained immature. His behaviour hasn't caught up with the age that he's at. Nevertheless, he is the most astounding footballer. And we're in danger of forgetting that because of the soap opera circus that surrounds him, his relationship with Paris Saint-Germain, where he's going next. This is a guy who has been perpetually injured, who's currently a couple of kilos, or at least a kilo overweight, who doesn't know where he's going, isn't brave enough to come out and do what Barcelona has said he should do, which is shout out about his preference, talk your way out of the club. He hasn't done that yet. And then second point I really want to make. You guys off the ball have been brilliant. Since I met you first, Jar, in the years that you've covered La Liga, you've given it the sort of breadth and seriousness that it merited. And right now, La Liga is topped by 2 clubs who are bigger than Atleti, although Atleti have had a powerful pre-season, who look foolish in the world's eyes right now. Barcelona had positional requirements, change the goalkeeper to make the budgets match, get some strengthening in central midfield, De Jong's in, get Griezmann to augment the fact that, they need to replace Suarez, that blah, 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 blah. Get full-back help in. And they've done it. They've met all their targets. They haven't budgeted for Neymar, and they haven't got the money for Neymar, but they're helter-skelter trying to get him. Real Madrid have spent 303 million. They've got about 9 players more than they can give a professional pass to play this season. They haven't made any progress in selling the remaining ones. Zidane and Florentino Perez are at daggers drawn because Zidane only wanted Pogba. Never mind Neymar. Pogba isn't going to come. So Zidane and Florentino Perez are falling out. Yet Florentino is like, I'm going to put one over Barcelona. Never mind whether we need another player. Never mind whether we just bought Eden Hazard and the place that Neymar would naturally play. They're making clowns of themselves in the world's eyes. And I, for one, am enjoying it.
Yeah. As ever, Graham, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million, man. We'll catch up real soon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Graham Hunter giving us plenty of insight into the clownish behaviour of 2 of the biggest clubs in world football. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with Phil after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Join Bruce Betting now for a risk-free first bet up to €100. That's right. New Irish accounts can enjoy a risk-free first bet up to €100. So if your first bet loses, we'll refund your stake with a free bet. Now that's giving you more. Bruce Betting. In store, online, and now on your phone. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
All right, we are very excited about this. Off the Ball in association with Cadbury's are bringing another monster Premier League roadshow your way on September the 4th. Roy Keane and Gary Neville are going to be our guests at the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre as they reminisce about their playing days and preview the new season. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited. We'll have tickets on sale later on this week. Phil Egan is here. Phil, how are you?
Good.
You're a Liverpool fan, but I suspect you might even be interested in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Am I allowed to tell everybody you're a Liverpool fan?
Yeah, I think people know at this stage, but I'm not one of these Liverpool fans that's going to get irked by Kenny Cunningham saying Harry Maguire is the best ball-playing centre half.
You just got to store that up there and bear a grudge for a year. And Kenny, you're like Conor Harron to that guy who tweeted him 5 years ago.
Yeah, I saw that tweet over the weekend. But yeah, don't be getting worked up about these things. Harry Maguire is brilliant at bringing the ball out from defence. Look back at the Man City and Leicester game last season when he set up that chance for James Maddison. That run itself probably
added an extra 20 million.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
My favourite thing about the whole Harry Maguire situation is that Paul Merson is now looking for his phone number so he can apologise to him for stuff that he said. I don't know if it was last week or the weekend before. Merson said something about the lines of the money being ridiculous, and he looks brilliant bringing the ball out because he always played with England with three centre backs. You only play with three centre backs if one of your defenders is no good. He's not that good a defender. And this is so egregious a sin in the world of English football that Merce feels that he's got to, because that's obviously his name, feels that he's got to ring him up and apologise.
It's very, very sad that we have kind of come to a final conclusion on Harry Maguire. My suspicion is always that he was going to work out okay, but it seems that that's it. Job done. They beat Chelsea 4-0. Chelsea hit the post a couple of times. That's it, Job done. Debate over. Harry Maguire was a success.
Retire the jersey.
Yeah, overreaction Monday, overreaction Tuesday. We need to bring this back. There's an idea we had where massive overreactions are already happening, and we thought we'd need to fake them. But let's just cool the jets a little bit on this whole Harry Maguire loving.
Absolutely.
Virgil van Dijk was Player of the Year after. Anyway, I don't know. Let's see. I'm not saying he's bad.
No, I think we all agreed he was going to improve the United defence, and he will. And the money, I said the money is ridiculous, but that's the modern game now.
What have you got for us?
We're going to start with Dundalk and the League of Ireland champions in action tonight. They know that they have to score in Tala to stay in the Europa League. They're 1-0 down to Slovan Bratislava going into the second leg in the third qualifying round. Dundalk have had problems scoring in Europe. They're the top scorers in the League of Ireland. They've scored 47 goals, but they've just one goal in their 5 European outings this season. However, manager Vinnie Perth believes his players are more than capable of turning this tie around tonight.
I believe there's a great moment. I believe there's a great night for this group. I think it's, as I've said before, I think it's the best squad we ever had, albeit we've been hurt with injuries over the whole season. But I believe it's a squad capable of, and I believe there's a big moment in this team. And we've got to use this crowd, the excitement of the game to be very minimal in a playoff or a group stage Europa League.
Yeah, that game at Tallaght Stadium kicks off at 8 o'clock. Also, action in the FAI Cup in the first round. You've got Longford Town against Athlone Town at the City Calling Stadium from 7:45. Bohemians await the winners in the second round. At 4 o'clock then, Wexford Youths will look to end their Women's Champions League qualification campaign with a win. They have 1 win and 1 defeat. They won't make the last 32, but they play Maltese champions Bakira Cara in their final Group 10 game. Celtic are also in action this evening. The Scottish champions host Romanian club Cluj in the second leg of their Champions League third qualifying round tie. 1-1 from the first leg. 7:45 start at Celtic Park. And speaking of Liverpool, they've confirmed they'll be without goalkeeper Alisson for a month. The Brazilian limped off during the 4-1 win over Norwich in the Premier League last Friday with a calf injury. So Liverpool will bring in former Preston keeper Andy Lonergan as cover. He was part of the pre-season tour. And manager Jurgen Klopp has also indicated that the Ireland under-21 international Caoimhín Kelleher will be a second choice keeper once he returns shortly from a wrist injury tomorrow night.
That's good.
It is, yeah. He would have played pre-season, unfortunately. He got that wrist injury.
Would have had a chance to take the number 1 gig. Really? No? If he'd played? Or did they always need somebody with experience in Adrian?
I think they were always going to sign. Yeah, if Mignolet hadn't have gone.
Yeah, so let's say Mignolet's gone, right?
Yeah.
And Kelleher plays all pre-season and plays well. Is he at that point second to Alisson, or is he still?
I think they're still going to sign an experienced.
All right, fair enough.
Somebody with Premier League experience. Could you imagine if they didn't, and Caoimhín Kelleher was getting thrown in now for the next month?
Yeah,
it'd be brilliant for him.
Yeah, and like maybe he's at that level. I don't know.
Did your heart flutter a little bit when Loris Karius was mentioned yesterday?
He's not coming back. There's no way he can ever.
I saw him trending on Twitter, and I was like, no way.
Nah, he couldn't. Unfortunately for him, he's broken after what happened in the Champions League finals. Remember when he
I saw him working out in Hollywood afterwards. He's grand.
Yeah, I think he's injured at the moment anyways.
Yeah, but remember when he came back then for the pre-season, and there was I don't know, I think it was Liverpool FC TV, LFC TV were doing their pre-match piece, and Karius is warming up in the background, and you can see it in the background where there's a ball just played down right down the middle, standard easy enough save, goes Karius, and it goes in under his legs, and you're thinking, oh no, that's not good. Some sad news from Argentina. The 1986 World Cup, the man that scored the first goal for Argentina,
Jose Luis Brown.
Yeah, he's died at the age of 62, and he's died of Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, he scored in the 3-2 win over West Germany in the final in Mexico, and played 36 times for Argentina. Also in that game, he dislocated his shoulder.
Did he?
Yeah.
And played on.
There's a picture of him, if you kind of look where you see him kind of tucking his arm in. He actually he refused to come off. And even he was brought in, he was a bit of a surprise inclusion for the World Cup, and he was just meant to be a backup centre half, but he ended up playing in the whole tournament and obviously scored in the finals. So some sad news, the likes of Gabriel Batistuta among those to pay tribute to Jose Luis Brown. Joey Carbery is set to miss the rest of Ireland's Rugby World Cup warm-up games due to the ankle injury he suffered against Italy last Saturday. However, the Munster out half is expected to be fit in time for the opening match of the tournament against Scotland. Former Wimbledon champion Andy Murray says he won't compete in the men's singles at the US Open next month. He's still continuing to recover from major hip surgery. Lost in straight sets against Richard Gasquet at the Cincinnati Masters last night. It was his first singles match since January, but he will continue his singles comeback in China next month. He's still going to play doubles at the US Open. He's actually back in action in the doubles later on today. And I know you were talking about Tommy Fury or Billy Joe Saunders. Who would it be?
Fury.
It's Billy Joe.
Is it?
Billy Joe has joined Matchroom. He's left Frank Warren.
Right.
And he's joined Eddie Hearn.
So that means big fights for him.
Yeah. Unbelievable boxer.
Yeah. Not a very good human.
No. A lot of the top guys don't really want to fight him because it's just not a comfortable fight. You can't hit him. He's too elusive. But yeah, he's out of the ring, not great. And
is Tommy Fury a good boxer?
2-0.
2-0. Well, from what we saw in Love Island, like he wasn't giving much away there. He didn't want to give much away, but did you think much of his technique?
Hitting the pads early in the season, then stopped hitting the pads, I think.
I'd be worried about his love for mayonnaise. Apparently he went through a lot of mayonnaise in the house, which is not great for a professional athlete.
I think he was moving up a weight class.
Yeah.
So I think that's the
oh, he's allowed. Yeah. He's supposed to be loading up.
There's other ways of doing it though.
Mayonnaise is not a good fat for you, and if you're...
But apparently
a spoonful.
He was going through buckets of it.
Right, okay. Right, we've got 30 seconds left. Is there anything else? You done?
No, that's me done. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. At 12 o'clock today on OTB Sports Radio, off the bench with the referee Michelle O'Neill, obviously an assistant referee in the Women's World Cup final. It's going to be an official this week in the Super Cup final between Liverpool and Chelsea. Our goal today is Dr. Harry Edwards talking about O.J. Simpson. He's one of the stars of the Oscar-winning O.J. Simpson documentary. That's a brilliant piece. Paul Azinger at 3 o'clock. Eric Donovan talking about corruption in boxing at 4. The debate, is Irish rugby overhyped? Ewan McKenna against Rory O'Connor from last November, and certainly a lot of what Ewan said at that point is very prescient at the moment, so that's worth your while a little bit later on OTB Sports Radio. The show, the Off the Ball show on News Talk will be coming your way at 7 o'clock this evening, and the football show live obviously from 9. That is just some of the highlights coming your way. If you download the Go Loud app, click on Off the Ball, It's live sports radio for you all the time, wherever you want it, whenever you need it. And of course, you can get all our stuff on Facebook and YouTube. Hit subscribe on YouTube, and anytime we go live, we'll ping you with it. Best place for all of our stuff, though, is offtheball.com. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:30. Good luck.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sport.